Chapter 456. Meeting one's foe. 8. From day to night, then again from night to the early morning, her mind had concentrated to a high degree and her speed had also risen to its extreme. These made Su Luo somewhat unable to endure. She was tired. In the hazy moonlight, she felt a faint stabbing pain in her head. Su Luo was suddenly startled awake. Lying on her stomach on the dead tree, she faintly saw a piece of wood drifting towards her that had a shadow on top of it. Even though she couldn't see it clearly, Su Luo nevertheless recognized that it was Li Aotian. He was truly like a lingering ghost. Su Luo secretly cursed in her heart. What's to be done? She also couldn't stay on this dead tree. But as for escaping, she was afraid it also wouldn't be that easy. Su Luo raised her eye to survey all around. The place was slightly similar to the Three Gorges, one, with steep cliffs on both sides. The precipice was like the blade of a knife. It was one gorge after another, forming pools like in the Yangtze River. The water was rapid, practically in one breath's time. It would push her very far. She saw Li Aotian was just about to catch up to her. Time was extremely pressing. Su Luo couldn't wait to think some more. She tore the lower part of her robe and placed it in a crevice of the dead tree, seeming as if it was there while not being there. This way, it looked as if she was hidden under a branch. Up ahead at the bend, in the blind spot from Li Aotian's line of sight, Su Luo made a leaping jump. With one hand, she grabbed the root of a willow that extended out from a steep, overhanging cliff. Su Luo's body was as lithe as a swallow, borrowing the power of the willow branch to swing and jump. Again, in the blink of an eye, her figure had already disappeared. She had already hidden herself in the branches with thick leaves at the top of an ancient tree. Here, all around were all sheer cliffs. Behind her was Li Aotian chasing to kill her. As long as she showed her face, he would catch sight of her. Therefore, Su Luo obediently stayed in that tree, hiding behind those lush, abundant branches and leaves. Su Luo curled up her body, letting her physiological functions adjust to operate at its lowest state. Her heart rhythm, blood circulation, breathing sounds and all her physiological functions were all without exception constrained. At this moment, her whole body was ice-cold stiff, like a snake in hibernation and almost lifeless. She was gambling. She was gambling that Li Aotian wouldn't use his consciousness to search on top of the river, because to penetrate through water resistance was much harder compared to air. Moreover, Li Aotian had just promoted to 7th rank, and his mental strength hadn't reached the level needed to constantly supply him with the energy to trace her. Li Aotian aggressively came over in pursuit to attack. Indeed, as Su Luo expected before, because searching the waterfall had wasted too much mental strength, so now, he didn't use it again. Rather, he wholeheartedly urged the piece of wood to pursue at a fast speed. Then he would attack. Li Aotian's gaze landed on top of that dead tree. Originally he didn't care, but very quickly, his sharp gaze found that yellow color between the tree leaves. If he didn't remember it wrongly, Su Luo, that loathsome girl, was precisely wearing a yellow silk skirt. Li Aotian's heart immediately became ecstatic. He hastened the wood beneath his feet to catch up with that dead tree at flying speed. Consequently, just like that, with bad luck, he passed right by where Su Luo was hiding in that ancient tree. When he passed by, Su Luo's eyes closed slightly, almost halting all of her physiological functions. After all, the difference in her strength compared to Li Aotian's was too great. If there was even the slightest of movement, he would be able to perceive the clue. Therefore, Su Luo must be cautious and prudent. But what made her very happy was that Li Aotian's attention was attracted by that yellow cloth. He completely didn't foresee that the real her was hidden within his reach in the periphery. Li Aotian, lacking complete awareness, rushed forward. His speed was fast to an unimaginable state. Seeing Li Aotian rush forward, afterwards, Su Luo slowly restored her body's functions. She exercised her limbs a little, then began to leave this ancient tree. Here, she had already left her scent, a difficult-to-erase trace. 1-3 Gorges, otherwise known as Yangtze, Yellow River, Gorges in China, is a beautiful scenic place with lots of places of historical importance along its banks. But the Three Gorges Dam built on top of it has changed the environment of the Three Gorges by a lot. Chapter 457. Meeting One's Foe 9. With Li Outyan's nature, he was merely temporarily deceived by her. When he became clear-headed, he would definitely find the clues in this ancient tree. There wasn't enough time for Su Luo to think further, and she climbed up the rock face of the sheer cliffs. Aside from the waterway, she could only climb up this precipice, then she would have a chance to live. Su Luo's speed was extremely fast. Her movements were also well hidden. The places she jumped to was secretive and covered up. With her heart and soul, she rushed forward while Li Outyan unexpectedly hadn't sensed her. Li Outyan had set all his heart on top of that dead tree. He concentrated his spirit powers onto the wood under his feet. The surrounding wind power pushed the floating wood to advance forward rapidly. Very quickly, Li Outyan was about 100 meters away from that dead tree. One could see the corner of Li Outyan's mouth hook into an ice-cold malicious sneer. His eyes produced a sinister radiance. "Loathsome girl. This time, let's see where you will run to." Li Outyan's body sprung up, separated by a distance of 100 meters. He directly leaped across the distance, and onto that dead tree. "Loathsome girl, roll out from there." Li Outyan sent a heavy palm strike towards the dead tree. In order to prevent the loathsome girl from escaping by diving into the water, he condensed almost all of his spirit power to surround that dead tree. Now, this dead tree was trapped in a net he arranged. Not even a housefly could fly out. But what made Li Outyan despair was that after his palm smashed down, that yellow piece of skirt immediately became dust. But he still couldn't even see Su Luo's shadow. Li Outyan looked at the destroyed skirt that was now dust, and his heart immediately became infuriated. He was once again played by Su Luo, that loathsome girl. Evidently, that loathsome girl hadn't been on this dead tree for a long time, but she had deliberately left pieces of her clothing behind to draw him here. Having been repeatedly cheated and taken in moreover, every time suffering the loss at identical places, Li Outyan was furious to the point of bursting into mad howls and cries. He was so angry, he smashed this dead tree into fine powder in just one strike. The loathsome girl was not here. Then where did she go? As long as he thought of Su Luo, this loathsome girl, hidden on the side, watching him chase after the fake article, he would be so enraged as to want to kill someone. Li Outyan aggressively rushed back to the path he came from. Along the way, he seemed not to pay the slightest to his spirit power, using it extravagantly while traveling. Under this kind of circumstances, Li Outyan very quickly found traces of the scent Su Luo left behind in that willow tree. This place he really did walk by a moment ago, and also when he accelerated his pace was in this place. As it turned out, at that time, that loathsome girl was actually hiding here, watching him doing something stupid. Very likely, that loathsome girl, at that moment, had even mocked him for being stupid. Li Outyan was simply infuriated to an extreme degree. He released his spirit force, followed Su Luo's scent and unceasingly searched. Finally, following the road she walked past where she left behind some traces, tightly pursued behind her. Speaking of Su Luo, she had temporarily shaken off Li Outyan, but she still hadn't relaxed a bit, because she knew how much stronger Li Outyan was compared to her. At any time, he could catch up to her once more to kill her. Su Luo hid her scent as much as possible, as she traversed through the forest at high speeds. She passed the 4th day unscathed. The 5th day, half of the day had already passed. Su Luo secretly sighed in her heart, wishing that the 5th and 6th day both would pass, and arrive more quickly to the 7th day. That would be best. Just thinking of this, suddenly, a trace of spirit force movement could be felt by Su Luo. Su Luo's heart was delighted, and her consciousness searched inside to see. She saw the little divine dragon that had originally been lying on his back on top of the lawn, giving off little snoring sounds while sound asleep. At this moment, he had started to wake up after already being asleep for a long time. One could only see his rotund little body sit up with his 2 little paws rubbing his drowsy, sleepy eyes. His little face was bewildered and innocent at the same time, with a blank and foolish appearance, simply so adorable she was about to burst. Su Luo immediately stretched out her hands to fish him out and cheerfully poked his little head. "Hey, this time, you finally woke up. See if next time you would dare to pilfer food." Chapter 458. Meeting one's foe 10. Recalling those several hundred pieces of crystal stones vanishing in a blink of an eye, Su Luo still felt her flesh in serious pain. The little divine dragon, having been watched by Su Luo with such interest, somewhat bashfully covered his little face. Through the small cracks in his paws, he stealthily looked at Su Luo. Su Luo laughingly pulled open his two little paws and poked at his head. Having swallowed so many crystal stones, you ought to have made some progress, right? Once he heard this, the little divine dragon immediately became excited. She only saw his furry little head fiercely nodding. Two huge black slippery eyes were full of excitement repeatedly. Awol was so great, so awesome. He was Su Luo's contract beast, so there was no problem with them communicating mind to mind. In what way is it awesome? Right now, Su Luo was in the midst of being chased all over the place while she fled in disarray. Once she heard the little divine dragon saying he was very awesome and difficult to deal with, she immediately became more spirited. Oh God, wasn't her luck rather too good? Over there, she was just being pursued to be killed till she was struggling at death's door. While on this side, the little divine dragon coaxed her with a mouthful of words. Su Luo was immersed in the boundless delusions of happiness. The little divine dragon did not know his master was reveling in delusions. One could only see his little paws open up to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Seeing Su Luo ignoring him, he started again to count on the other paw. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Su Luo saw him counting again and again, still able to go up further. She couldn't help but to ask in surprise. This 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what does it mean? Didn't know why, but she had a faint, not so good premonition. The little divine dragon had opened wide his large, limpid eyes that were innocent and adorable, as he looked at Su Luo perplexedly. Oh, master, 5th rank. I'm a 5th rank, what? Su Luo suddenly felt things in front of her eyes darken, and she nearly tumbled to the ground on the spot. Before, she had thought the little divine dragon was really very difficult to deal with. She didn't expect that he was only at 5th rank. Su Luo was helpless as well as speechless. With a sad heart that ached in pain, she looked at the little divine dragon. She sighed and said alas unceasingly. It really was that the greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. The little divine dragon didn't know why. All of a sudden, Master's mood became downcast. He somewhat anxiously, and on tenterhooks tugged at her clothing. Su Luo only smiled and rubbed his head. Wanting to put all the pressure on your body is because your family's owner is too useless. It has nothing to do with you. Su Luo somewhat helplessly sighed. In terms of talent and opportunity, each point, she was not lacking compared to others, but her only weakness was time. She arrived in this world too late. When she started, it was much later than others, to the extent that she must catch up to them at all cost. A gap of 10 years' time, whereas now, she had crossed over for less than a few months. Wanting her to cut down the gap of 10 years in a short while was practically impossible. However, she firmly believed that as long as she was given time, 2 years, no only 1 year, her strength would absolutely be able to step on Li Aoyan's head. The little divine dragon tugged at Su Luo's clothing somewhat restlessly. He still hadn't told Master about the latest skill he obtained. Seeing his master's appearance of heaving deep sighs, the little divine dragon very smartly sat on the ground with his chin resting on both paws. His pair of monochrome, large, limpid, innocent eyes watched his little master. Oh, there was a bad person. Suddenly, the little divine dragon gave a light howling sound. At the same time, Su Luo also felt danger approaching. Li Aoyan, this person whose influence still lingered on like a ghost, had actually once again caught up to her. Su Luo picked up the little divine dragon and immediately turned around to run. Now, the little divine dragon had a serious expression on his little face. If you want to discuss danger, then his perceptiveness was still even stronger compared to Su Luo's. Therefore, he could clearly sense the formidable strength of the enemy. This time Li Aoyan had already nearly gone berserk. His speed was several times faster than before. Chapter 459. Meeting one's foe 11. Without waiting for Su Luo to find a path to flee for her life, Li Aoyan already stood in front of her. Su Luo's heart was suddenly startled, and subconsciously she sent the little divine dragon back into her space. Li Aoyan, Seeing Su Luo in front of him, his eyes burst out with a scathing, murderous aura. Loathsome girl, you actually have some skills. Under the pressure of my pursuit, you can actually still last a day and a night. Li Outyan's cold and gloomy gaze stared at Su Luo. Su Luo's heart restrained her fear, while her face was calm and collected without a single ripple. She gave a shallow smile. Did you like that dead tree? As much as possible, Su Luo stalled for time, her head thinking deeply of ways to escape. Just mentioning this, Li Outyan's eyes burst into a raging flame. Loathsome girl! You court death. Su Luo smiled indifferently. You think you could really kill me? Then just try it. See whether I can or cannot strike you, loathsome girl, dead with one palm. To save the effort that you will go out again to cause calamity in the human world. Li Outyan had the appearance of a champion that worked on behalf of the heavens. While talking, he also condensed his spirit power, just wishing to hack towards Su Luo's head. Hold it. Su Luo raised her hand with a smile that was not quite a smile as she raised an eyebrow to look at him. Could it be that you don't have even a little bit of interest in those secret books I took from the Amethyst Fish Palace? Li Outyan's palm immediately stiffened on the spot. He couldn't help but to want to slap his own head. These few days, his mind was all placed on killing this loathsome girl for revenge. He absolutely forgot that in the Amethyst Fish Palace, this loathsome girl's luck had been so good as to burst. In one breath, she had seized a lot of secret books. Those secret books were rarely seen. Even the Jade Lake's palace would drool over them. If he could bring back a few secret books, in all likelihood, the family would value him even more. Li Outyan thought up to here. Immediately his expression became frosty. Towering above her, he glared at Su Luo. Loathsome girl, quickly hand over the secret books. How could Su Luo possibly just hand over the secret books? Without a doubt, as long as she handed over the secret books, immediately after, he would hack her to death. Su Luo's face looked somewhat embarrassed, her long, shapely eyebrows wrinkled. But the secret books were hidden away by me. Where did you hide it? In any case, this loathsome girl was already an object in his pocket. Killing her earlier or later, both would end up with her being dead. Su Luo fearfully watched him, with her expression carrying a slight nervousness. If I were to hand over the secret books, are you going to let me go? Li Outyan's expression paused. A murderous intent flashed through his eyes, but he only sneered. Not kill you? This I could consider. Merely consider and nothing more. Of course, Su Luo realized his desire to kill her wouldn't die. They were now in a state where if one didn't die, then the enmity wouldn't be extinguished. If it was not her dead, then it was him. Although she deeply understood this situation, Su Luo's expression was still feigning innocence and sincerity. Seeing Li Outyan saying this, she seemed to believe him immediately. Okay, as long as you let me go, I will bring you to find the secret books. Li Outyan looked her up and down once, his eyebrows knotted tightly. Don't even consider some damnable clever plan. Wherefore would I have some crafty plan? Su Luo had an innocent expression on her face, while spreading her hands open. Li Outyan thought about it but was still not reassured. This won't do, you loathsome girl. Have too many cunning ideas, simply impossible to guard against. He just finished speaking when he took out a rope, and placed both of Su Luo's hands behind her back. He bound her hands directly and efficiently. One look at that rope, and Su Luo immediately became happy. This item was something she saw not long ago. She remembered that at that time in Sunset Mountain Range, Huang had been afraid she would escape, so she had bound her, attempting to escort her to Jade Lake's palace. However, it was very unfortunate that on the way there, Huang was gotten rid of by the little divine dragon's dad. Chapter 460, Fleeing on the Uninhabited Island, 1. Su Luo remembered the rope at that time was red in color, and also remembered what Huang said at that time. It was a restraining spirit rope specifically used to bind a criminal without any spirit power. However, Su Luo discovered that the rope tying her now was a slightly deeper color than the one from that time. She used spirit power, wanting to untie it, but discovered that the more spirit power she used, the deeper the red rope would sink into her flesh. It was so painful she grimaced. Li Outyan arrogantly swept a glance at Su Luo. Laughing grimly, he said, "A naive, loathsome girl, who haven't seen the world. This is a restraining immortal rope. Even an immortal tied by this won't be able to escape. I will watch how you try to escape this time." Li Outyan's gaze swept towards both of Su Luo's legs. If the loathsome girl still wanted to escape, he didn't mind breaking both of her legs. Su Luo frowned slightly. It seemed that this red rope, compared to Er Huang's rope at that time, would be considered the upgraded version. Also, it was not too surprising. Stuff that was suitable to be taken out by the second young master of Jade Lake's palace. How could the item's rank be equal to ones carried by a servant girl? In this instance, it was of much higher grade. Su Luo couldn't help but to sigh inwardly in her heart. Even though she had temporarily preserved her life, however, she was tied up like this. Both of her legs and hands were tied up by the restraining immortal rope. Even if she wanted to escape, it would be difficult. Li Outyan coldly glared at her. "Quickly lead the way in the front. If we don't find the secret books by tonight, then I will chop off one of your hands." Look at that, so easily he would cut off a person's limbs. What a violent man. Su Luo faintly sighed again. Being rushed by Li Outyan to walk forward, Su Luo was urgently communicating with the little divine dragon in her head. What kind of powerful magical beast is on this uninhabited island? Su Luo asked, full of hope. The little dragon, with his little head crooked at an angle, pondered for a moment. Afterwards, he shook his head. He truly couldn't sense anything. Su Luo again changed to another method. Then is there a place to hide treasures? Once he heard treasure, the little divine dragon immediately started to get excited. There was. Once she mentioned cleaning up treasure, the little divine dragon was so excited he nearly jumped up. Su Luo thought to herself, places where treasures were hidden definitely would have all kinds of traps and pitfalls. Thinking this way, Su Luo's heart was slightly relieved. Along the way, Li Outyan continuously made sarcastic remarks to Su Luo, using the slightest pretext to berate her. In the end, where is it hidden? If you dare to deceive me, humph. Li Aotain snorted out a cold sound from his nose. Su Luo happily sent him a gratuitous glance. When I was running away in a panic, I didn't have time to choose the route. How could I remember everything that clearly? Loathsome girl, you dare to toy with me. Li Outyan's expression was getting angry. His eyes were steaming with the desire to commit murder. How could I dare to toy with you, the Jade Lake Palace's second young master? Su Luo cast him a glance, snorting twice. The rope is bound so tightly. How could I walk away so quickly? Li Outyan cast cold, sidelong glances at her. The rope binding you could cut off both of your arms. You choose yourself. Su Luo's expression was indignant, yet she had no other choice but to remain silent. She was aware that Li Outyan hated her nearly to the point of wanting to cut her into 8 chunks. If she didn't have the secret books to attract him, it was for sure he would have already made his move. Su Luo's expression assumed a feeling of being fearful and helpless, but she was communicating with the little divine dragon nonstop in her mind. Following the direction he pointed to, bit by bit, they got closer to the target area. The color of the sky gradually darkened. The two of them were still walking in the jungle. Very quickly, nightfall arrived. A few remnant stars hung in the desolate sky. Li Outyan's footsteps suddenly halted. He coldly and furiously shouted at Su Luo. Why have we still not arrived? Loathsome girl, are you toying with me? Su Luo gave a cold snort. It's up ahead. We are almost there. Do you believe it or not that I will immediately kill you? Li Outyan's patience was extremely limited. Chapter 461. Fleeing on the uninhabited island 2. If along the way, Su Luo hadn't unceasingly reminded him how valuable the secret books were, maybe he would have already been unable to bear it, and hacked Su Luo to death with a palm strike. Su Luo looked at the color of the sky, deliberately letting out a sigh. It seems tonight, we will arrive at our destination. Very likely, it will be somewhat difficult. Stop and rest. Li Outyan thought about it. Finally, he still decided to stop and reorganize a little. For this one day and one night, Su Luo had run until her vision blurred and she was dizzy. Him chasing after her behind her was also not relaxing, especially when it came to the mental strength that had been squandered excessively. He used it until some pain sprouted in his head. He needed some time to restore his mental strength. Li Outyin, in passing, conveniently grabbed another red-colored rope and coldly said to Su Luo, "Loathsome girl, you must really want to take advantage of when I cultivate to escape, right?" In her capacity as a prisoner, after being caught, of course she could not admit it. Su Luo firmly shook her head. "How can I even escape?" "Humph." Li Outyin definitely did not believe her lies. With one move, he pushed Su Luo down. The red-colored rope was wrapped around her legs twice, and then tied into a dead knot. "This time see how you can run." Li Outyin stood up with a malevolent appearance as he glared at Su Luo. His tone was cold and strange, such that it could make a person's back tremble. This restraining immortal rope, the more she struggled, the tighter it would bind her, and even harder it would be to untie. There were countless number of ways the restraining immortal rope could be tied. Only the person tying the rope would know what knot was used. Only if you knew the knot would you be able to untie it. As a result, Li Outyin was basically not worried that Su Luo would run. After he was finished dealing with Su Luo, Li Outyin whirled around and left. He flew to an ancient tree at the side and closed his eyes, sitting down to meditate. This position he picked to practice his cultivation and was very good. His point of view just so happened to face the position where Su Luo sat. Merely opening his eyes slightly, he was then able to view Su Luo's every movement. Naturally, in the beginning, Su Luo was expressionless and well-behaved. She sat leaning against the tree trunk, motionlessly recuperating with her eyes closed, as if she had already accepted the fact she was his prisoner. She had a helpless appearance of having resigned herself to her fate. A sneer hooked up at the corner of Li Outyin's mouth, a sinister radiance flashing through his eyes. Resigned herself to fate? On this uninhabited island in front of her, he was the heavens. At any time, he could order her to drop dead, but to just kill her was letting her off too lightly. Wait until he got the secret books. Afterwards, he would torment her unceasingly, letting her taste what was called. It would be better to die than to live. Li Outyin had complete confidence in his own strength. He also had complete confidence in the might of the restraining immortal rope. He firmly believed that Su Luo could not possibly escape. In fact, it really was like this now. Su Luo really couldn't move a single step. However, Li Outyin nevertheless overlooked a point through negligence. Su Luo could not move, but the little divine dragon could. In the blind spot that Li Outyin could not see, Su Luo stealthily released the little divine dragon. Originally, she had wanted to tell the little divine dragon to go cause a disturbance. But unexpectedly, this little thing saw that she was tied up. Immediately, he became angry and readily took a bite out of the red-colored rope at her back. One could only hear a slight snapping sound. The rumored legendary restraining immortal rope, a treasure that Li Outyin had complete confidence in, was immediately bitten apart by the little divine dragon. Su Luo was immediately shocked. This damnable thing. What kind of treasure was it considered as? Fancy that Li Outyin was still bragging about it in front of her. He was bragging as if only the heavens had this rope, and it did not exist on earth. But who would have thought that it couldn't even resist the little divine dragon's mouthful of teeth? Li Outyin detected some difference. He swept an indifferent, meaningful glance towards Su Luo. It was already too late for Su Luo to close her eyes and rest. Rushing into this gap, she cast a fawning expression towards Li Outyin. Li Outyin only felt the corner of his eyes move, and unsympathetically turned his face away. Now the loathsome girl knew to be afraid? She wanted to make use of the honey trap? She could dream on for 1,000 years. Chapter 462. Fleeing on the Uninhabited Island 3. Li Outyin's heart extremely looked down upon Su Luo. He gave a cold humph and continued to cultivate. How could he have known that the reason why Su Luo was like this was in order to show the enemy she was weak? She deliberately made him relax his guard, so she could make good preparations for her own escape. A fugitive fleeing from the law, who didn't want to escape, was not a good fugitive. Su Luo, this good example of a fugitive, was prepared to escape at any time. Just after Li Outyin resumed his cultivation state, Su Luo then hid the little divine dragon under her skirt, allowing him to bite apart the red rope binding her legs. The little divine dragon was very obedient. This time, he even cleverly covered his little mouth while his snow-white sharp teeth slowly grinded away at the rope, afraid of producing even the slightest sounds. That cautious and serious little appearance gave Su Luo's heart an extremely comforting feeling from watching. Very quickly, the restraining immortal rope on Su Luo's leg was bitten off by the little divine dragon, and both her arms and legs had their freedom restored. Su Luo insincerely observed Li Outyin. Seeing him immersed deeply in the midst of cultivation, a faint smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. If she didn't go now, then when should she wait until? There wasn't enough time to think some more. Su Luo picked up the little divine dragon. In the time it took for her to take off and land a few times, she had already vanished into the jungle. All of this took place noiselessly. Li Outyin, who was immersed in the midst of cultivation, completely did not detect it. He simply did not know that unexpectedly, Su Luo, who was tied up with the restraining immortal rope, could escape. Seconds and minutes of time passed. After approximately an hour had passed, Li Outyin finished his cultivation. Slowly he opened his tightly closed pair of eyes. After circulating for an hour, his mental strength had already been restored by 30%. He decided that if this time, the loathsome girl toyed with him once again, he certainly would first break one of her arms, and see if she still dared to do it. Li Outyan's gaze swept towards the direction where Su Luo was. Suddenly the grim laugh at the corner of his mouth was frozen in an instant. Li Outyan's eyes were full of an unimaginable expression. His body immediately flew down from the ancient tree, directly landing at the place Su Luo was sitting before. In the end, where did the person go to? Wasn't her hands and feet bound by the restraining immortal rope? In spite of everything, she could still escape? Li Outyan was simply incredulous. This matter had already exceeded his scope of comprehension. No matter what, he could not imagine, in the end, how this matter could have happened. Undoubtedly, her hands and feet were bound. A person undoubtedly bound by restraining immortal rope. The more she moved, the deeper the restraining immortal rope would sink into her flesh. Finally, it was completely capable of cutting off a person's 2 legs while they were still alive. But nevertheless, he had lost the loathsome girl's trace. Li Outyin released his consciousness and unceasingly searched the surroundings, as if trying to find Su Luo, who was dying because of trying to escape, and so was tightly strangled by the restraining immortal rope. However, Su Luo had already escaped and disappeared without a trace. How could she have let him find her? Li Outyin very quickly was infuriated until he was nearly insane. He had known since earlier that this loathsome girl was as crafty as a fox. Earlier, he should have smashed her into a meat patty when he caught her. But time and time again, she led him by the nose, and he was repeatedly careless again and again. From before, when he froze her into an ice sculpture, and up until now, when he used the restraining immortal rope to bind her. Originally, he believed it was absolutely fail-proof, but always at the most critical time, something would go wrong and she would escape. Li Outyin almost suspected whether Su Luo, this loathsome girl, was a cat in a formal incarnation with 9 lives? How could she avert disaster time and time again? He vowed. This time, when he found that loathsome girl again, don't need to bother with how to torment her. Directly smashing her into meat patty was the most dependable. Li Outyan's fists clenched tightly at his side. Taking large strides, he left this place. This time, Su Luo ran away very quickly, and also with the help of the little divine dragon's directions. So if Li Outyin imagined he would find her in a little while like before, it would be very difficult. Chapter 463. Fleeing on the uninhabited island 4. She didn't know how long she had been running in the forest. The sky was indistinct and hazy. In the east, a reddish sun slowly rose, little by little breaking through the darkness of dawn. The light of daybreak penetrated through the sky, with large areas of orange and reddish clouds. The 5th day had passed. Today was already the 6th day that Nangong Luyun had mentioned before. Su Luo somewhat helplessly forced out a bitter smile. These 2 days and 2 nights of fleeing had been really hair-raising, with dangers springing up all around, and every time, she would be hovering on the verge of life or death. If it was not for her being quick-witted, she didn't know how many times she would have already died. Now it was already the 6th day. One more day, in another day, Nangong Liyun's martial arts would be completely restored. Then, she would not have to flee all over the place like she was doing right now. Su Luo raised her head to look at the gorgeous red clouds in the sky. She fished out the little divine dragon. Rubbing his head, she said, "Quickly, go ahead to lead the way. We don't have much time." The little divine dragon knowingly replied with 2 barking sounds, as his little body traveled rapidly through the forest. His speed was so fast as to pass by in an instant. Su Luo followed behind his body. When it was necessary, she would use spirit dance steps to flee on top of the trees. Because this way, with Li Outyin wanting to pursue her, maybe she could increase her level. Su Luo didn't demand that she defeat him, just as long as she could endure until Nangong Liyan came out of closed-door cultivation would be good enough. The sun in the east gradually moved overhead in the sky. Now it was already noon. All of a sudden, the little divine dragon pointed towards a hidden cave up ahead. He turned his little head and barked directly at Su Luo. Awo, detour. There is a magical beast. There is a magical beast. Magical beast? Su Luo was immediately astonished. Before, she found it very strange that there wasn't even a single magical beast on this uninhabited island. She didn't expect for there to actually be one on the island. Awo. There is an infant beast. There is an infant beast. Joyful, excited rays of light clearly flashed through the little divine dragon's large monochromatic eyes. He was itching to rush in immediately to try and find the young magical beast to play with. How could there be a magical beast here? Su Luo felt this was somewhat sudden. After all, this island didn't seem to have a single magical beast. Then unexpectedly, a magical beast appearing here moreover. It even had a young offspring? Is this magical beast difficult to deal with? Awo, 7th rank. 7th rank magical beast. The little divine dragon excitedly gestured while speaking and nodded his head fiercely at Su Lu's 7th rank magical beast. Su Luo's heart was suddenly startled. There was actually a 7th rank magical beast on this uninhabited island? She was just about to carry the little divine dragon and take a detour when suddenly, a light bulb lit up in her mind. 7th rank magical beast. Li Outyin was also 7th rank. Hey. The corner of Su Luo's mouth hooked into a smirk of hatching an evil scheme, as she leaned into the little divine dragon's ear and muttered a few sentences in a low tone. The little divine dragon evidently was very interested in this kind of risky adventure, his little head nodding repeatedly. In the blink of an eye, his little body disappeared before Su Luo's eyes. Su Luo used the celestial spirit water and sprinkled it in a corner gap in the distance to draw the mother magical beast away. At the same time, this allowed the little divine dragon to go in with flying speed, pick up an infant beast, then run. After the preparations were completed, Su Luo lay on her stomach behind an ancient tree not far away. Then, she saw a huge brown bear sniffing its nose, looking for an objective. Very quickly, it found the celestial spirit water on the ground. What Su Luo carried out was just too cunning. She had spilled the large majority of the water on the ground, only leaving a little in the cup. The brown bear readily drank that little mouthful of celestial spirit water in the cup in one gulp. Very quickly, it was attracted to a stop by this mystical flavor. Like it had taken drugs, it was unable to let go ever again. The infant beast in the cave yelled "Awo." It ignored the infant and only bowed down its head and buried it into the ground, sniffing here and there. It swallowed the weeds that carried some soil into its mouth. The little divine dragon had already taken out that infant beast and ran to in front of Su Luo. Before he could take credit for his achievement, that little infant bear gave sharp screeching sounds of "Awo." Su Luo secretly said in her heart, "Oh no." Chapter 464. Fleeing on the Uninhabited Island 5. Sure enough, once the mommy brown bear saw her own family's young being taken away by a person, at once, she became furious. "Quickly run!" Su Luo yelled loudly. She picked up the little divine dragon and the little bear to put them into her space, released her legs, and ran back towards the road she came from. Li Outyin was there. Wherefore would the mommy bear still care about the sweet water on the ground? She opened up her heavy 4 legs and rushed towards Su Luo's back with flying speed. The brown bear was still in the midst of using her strong force, so speed-wise, she still wasn't considered very fast. Therefore, under the circumstances of Su Luo taking the first opportunity to quickly flee a step ahead, wanting to catch up to her was very difficult. But her speed was still faster than Su Luo had planned on. Following the passing of time, the distance between the two continuously pulled closer. Su Luo couldn't help but secretly complain bitterly in her heart. Before, she wished that Li Outyin would never catch up to her. But now, she longed for Li Outyin to appear in front of her, like an immortal god in the next moment. That would be great. Along with the distance being constantly pulled closer, Su Luo practically could feel the heat from the roar the mommy brown bear sprayed at her. 10 meters, 5 meters, 3 meters. The distance between the two had already gotten close to the limit. At any moment, the mommy brown bear would suddenly jump up to quickly pounce at Su Luo, just at this critical moment. Li Outyin descended like an immortal god. His tall and straight figure appeared on the broad road up ahead. He had both hands crossed in front of his chest, standing there calmly, as if waiting for Su Luo to walk right into his trap. Su Luo's heart was immediately overjoyed. Not afraid you were here, only afraid you weren't here. She rushed towards Li Outyin. At the same time, she happily yelled in a loud voice. Boss, didn't you want to eat a young brown bear? I returned after catching one for you, take it. While speaking, Su Luo tossed that very small infant brown bear towards Li Outyin's chest. Li Outyin subconsciously caught it, but at the same time he frowned. What rubbish was this loathsome girl saying? Who was the boss? Really funny. However, an infant brown bear. Li Outyin's eye immediately began to shine. It was said that an infant brown bear was surprisingly effective when used to restore someone's appearance. Now that his appearance was completely ruined, what he needed the most was an infant brown bear. The loathsome girl actually did a good deed. Li Outyin steadily caught the infant brown bear, however, before waiting for him to settle it after the catch. A majestic, formidable, huge brown bear immediately rushed forward from Su Luo's back, ruthlessly pouncing towards Li Outyin. Li Outyin temporarily hadn't noticed that his face was slashed by the sharp claws of the bear's forepaw, leaving behind a deep, bloody scar. Li Outyin's heart was immediately startled. His heart couldn't help but rain out curses. He should have known earlier that the loathsome girl would have bad intentions. As it turned out, she had planned this opportunity to cause him trouble. But now his face was injured, and hatred was already created. Li Outyin knew perfectly well that this was Su Luo's plan. Yet still, he was honor-bound to throw himself into the trap. This was exactly what Su Luo had overtly plotted. The brown bear's heart was already set on Li Outyin being the master schemer. It was him that wanted to eat her darling baby. She hated Li Outyin to the bone. Li Outyin's face was ruined, so he had been in a rage from earlier. How could he easily let this huge, foolish bear go? Consequently, a man and a beast, just like this, became tangled up in a fight together. Momentarily, they were caught up in an irresolvable fight. Li Outyin was a 7th-rank expert. The huge brown bear was a 7th-rank magical beast. There was hardly any difference in strength between the two. Therefore, for a short while, the outcome of the battle between them was hard to determine. Su Luo had originally planned on escaping, but now, she merely hid in the jungle, very carefully observing the fighting match. Neighbors who couldn't agree would lose out to a third party. She didn't know whether she would have this good fortune. Li Outyin was extremely sly. In fact, considering their true strength, he was unable to compare to the natural-born spirit strength of the huge brown bear. But his luck was good. In his hand, he had an infant brown bear. Whenever the huge bear was about to use a killing strike, he would always cleverly present the little brown bear in front of him. Chapter 465, Fleeing on the Uninhabited Island 6. The mommy brown bear would immediately refrain from shooting at a rat, for fear of breaking vases. Once, twice, 3 times, every time this trick was played on her, the mommy brown bear immediately became furious. One could only see her mouth all of a sudden condense out a dense, stinky, fishy-smelling, viscous liquid that was quickly sprayed towards Li Outyin's body. When this viscous liquid was shot flying out, a touch of unease flight across Li Outyin's scarlet eyes. At that moment, it was too late for him to think too much. He ruthlessly threw the little foolish bear towards the mouthful of viscous liquid that the mommy brown bear had spit out. The mommy brown bear had an aghast expression. With a huge mournful howl, its body pounced over at flying speed and pressed the little foolish bear underneath her body. That was so that it might avoid this viscous liquid that could nearly corrode everything. That little foolish bear was completely ignorant and at a loss. Its huge, whirling, clear eyes bewilderedly watched its mommy and doubtfully looked at its surroundings. However, just at this time, Li Outyin grabbed this opportunity and shouted loudly, "Freeze over the realm of the heavens!" In that instant, everything around immediately changed into pure white snow. Wherever the eye could see, it was a vast white color. With the huge brown bear as the focus, one after another, sharp sword blades of ice shot towards her, as if wanting to bore a hole through her heart with 10,000 arrows. Now, even if Su Luo wanted to run, it was already too late. The very unfortunate thing was that her body was directly frozen to the spot. She couldn't move even a tiny bit. The huge foolish bear was also not easy to deal with. Howl a furious loud roar, and a flame burst out and rushed forth, spreading to all directions. Very quickly, a forest fire started. Crack, crack. Crack, sound after sound of violent noise. Blocks and blocks of snowy ice was melted into water droplets by the raging inferno. Li Outyan's heart was very angry. Since it is like this, then I will give you something terrible to have a look at. One could see Li Outyan's mouth mumbling something to himself, and all of a sudden, at the place where the huge bear stood, one sharp, icy thorn after another, without warning they all burst out. Within a range of several hundred meters, it was covered with sharp, icy thorns. The huge foolish bear momentarily did not notice, and a hole was stabbed through its belly, blood at once rushing out wildly. Finished. Su Luo's heart let out a howl of grief. Looked like the huge foolish bear was no match for Li Outyan. Su Luo let out a sigh of helplessness. Originally, she had planned to borrow the huge foolish bear's hand to eliminate Li Outyan. Now, it seemed to be impossible. She only hoped that the huge brown bear could wound Li Outyan a little more seriously. This way, the pressure on her while fleeing would also lessen a little. At the present moment, taking advantage of the fact that Li Outyan was occupied, she had better run fast. How far she was able to run? Then it would be that far that she would run. At this point of time, Su Luo's frozen state had already been undone by the huge foolish bear's intense flame. One could see her quietly move backwards, withdrawing step by step. After moving away by about several hundred meters, she immediately turned and fled at high speed. Run, run! Run! Su Luo went around in circles in the forest. If it was not for the little divine dragon giving directions, it was very likely she could get lost while running. Didn't know how long after did Su Luo finally stop. She steadied her breathing and drank a cup of celestial spirit water to replenish the water in her body. Where is that important place with the traps? Su Luo asked while drinking water. It seemed that Li Outyan ought to win. Su Luo must plan her next step. Awu, the little divine dragon's short legs stood on Su Luo's shoulder and pointed at the mountain range not far up ahead, excitedly and straightforwardly shouting awu. Su Luo silently calculated once. Its distance was less than the time it took to burn one stick of incense. Very quickly, they would get there. She was just about to get up when suddenly, she felt a sharp pain in her head. The little divine dragon also felt it. The two of them looked at each other. A helpless expression was exposed in Su Luo's eyes. In the beginning, she still believed that the huge, foolish bear would at least hinder Li Outyan for a while to allow her to make preparations. But now, it seemed the brown bear had let down her great trust. Su Luo didn't need to think. She turned around and immediately rushed forward. Chapter 466, Mountain of Flames 1. Li Outyan, who was chasing behind her with a malicious expression and a grim gaze, tenaciously pursued any scent of Su Luo she might have left behind. His originally sinister face right now had bloody scars scratched by sharp claws, with the flesh flipping outwards, and the wound so deep that even the bone could be seen. It would cause people who saw it to be shocked by this ghastly sight, and to be scared witless. There were also many wounds on his body, Fresh blood dyed his entire robe red, and the smell of blood was very strong. However, seeing his speed, which was as fast as a stormy wind, made it seem as if it was all external wounds, while his strength didn't seem to have suffered much. On the contrary, there was already no silhouette of the huge, foolish bear. Didn't know what its current state was. While Li Outyin was pursuing, at the same time he coldly crooned, "Loathsome girl, cherish well this last bit of opportunity to breathe. Very soon, you will never need to breathe again." That huge, foolish bear had been very difficult to deal with. If it was not for the fact that it had just given birth not long ago, he absolutely could not defeat it. A magical beast was a magical beast. Even under the circumstances where its strength had been reduced, it could still fight to a draw with him. Ultimately, he was preoccupied with hunting down Su Luo, that loathsome girl. So he had no choice but to toss that little foolish bear back. Otherwise they would still be fighting. "Loathsome girl, see where you can run to now." Li Outyan's expression was cold and gloomy. With a grim laugh, a vigorous spirit force condensed under his feet in a split second. Immediately, a brilliant ray of light burst out from under the soles of his feet. His speed was at its pinnacle, leaving behind a savage, shadowy image in the sky. That astonishing speed swept past the forest, tightly chasing after Su Luo's back. Oh no! Su Luo, by chance, turned her head around. She saw that behind her, not far away, was a savage shadow stepping on top of trees with the utmost speed, coming over and pursuing her. Through her naked eyes, it could clearly be seen that he had almost arrived with violent speed. Su Luo's expression changed slightly. She knew Li Outyin was enraged, and had no plans to intermingle with her again. Rather, he was prepared to directly kill her. His patience had already arrived at the lowest point. The little divine dragon seemed to have sensed Su Luo's deep worry, and gave two howls of a woo. A white, brilliant light erupted from his body, and wove towards both of Su Luo's legs. SSSSS. Su Luo immediately inhaled a deep breath of air. What did she discover? After the little divine dragon's white light was added to the soles of her feet, her speed actually increased. She visually estimated that her speed had increased by 10% or so. Su Luo was puzzled and looked at the little divine dragon. What's going on? She sensed it was not only her speed that was amplified, even her strength had followed along to also increase by 10%. The little divine dragon. A new ability, can increase master's strength by 10%. It really was like this. Su Luo's expression was overjoyed and continued to inquire. Is it just by 10%? The little divine dragon. Every time she rose one level, he could give master an increase of another 10%. If it was not for the fact that they were on the road fleeing right now, Su Luo wished she could grab the little divine dragon and madly kiss him a few times. This reward was simply too wonderful. When she was at the 4th rank, her strength could be increased by 10%. When she was 5th rank, then it would be amplified by 20%. When she was 6th rank, it would be 30%. And so on. She was simply blessed. However, it's a pity her strength was too weak right now. Even if it was increased by another 10%, it still didn't have much use. All of a sudden, Su Luo felt danger getting closer. Just at this moment, she exploited the 10% increase in speed under her feet, and released the spirit dance steps, once again displaying this marvelous technique. In a flash, her body leaned to the left at a strange angle, and slid a far distance away. Her speed was astonishing, and also left behind a remnant shadow. Just at this time Su Luo's figure slid away. A huge palm strike heavily landed at the place Su Luo was a moment ago. Chapter 467, Mountain of Flames, 2. Momentarily, the air rolled out in waves and the atmosphere seemed to boil over. The ancient trees in the surrounding circle was uprooted all at once and shaken into pieces. A deep hole in the shape of a palm, that was enough to bury a person in, remained behind. Su Luo watched with lingering fear at that deep hole with dust flying upwards around it. She then turned her body and changed directions to rush forward with great speed. Just a moment ago, if it was not for the little divine dragon, increasing her speed by 10%, perhaps she would have been directly slapped dizzy into that deep hole by Li Outyan's palm strike. Damn it! Li Outyan's palm strike did not hit the target. A raging flame was ignited in his eyes. He had calculated everything perfectly. The loathsome girl's speed had already soared to its maximum. He had already taken into consideration her speed and direction she was fleeing to. Once this palm strike went down, it could directly bury her alive. But who would have known that her speed would suddenly increase at the last minute, causing his calculations to fail in the end? A savage and malicious sneer appeared on Li Outyan's face. Good can avoid the first time. Let's see if you have the ability to avoid it a second time. The first strike did not hit. Li Outyan basically had no plans to give up. His figure launched in a flash, the toes of his feet occasionally tapping the top of the trees to borrow strength. The air had bursts of his remnant images, making a person faint from blurred vision. He chipped away at the distance to Su Luo's back during the chase. When he saw Su Luo's silhouette again, the corner of his mouth hooked into a grim smile. Boom! Another palm strike was slapped towards Su Luo's back. Su Luo could feel the danger from the approaching attack. She instinctively wanted to flee, but what made her despair was that palm strike seemed to be stuck to her back. No matter how she tried to shake it off, she couldn't avoid it. Finally, she could only watch that huge shadow violently hit her back. Its approaching strength was so severe as to be terrifying. Su Luo could only feel a piercing pain that hurt dearly coming from her back, spreading and bursting through her 4 limbs and hundreds of bones. She couldn't suppress it. A mouthful of blood wildly sprayed out. With one hand pinching that jade piece, and another hand covering her chest, her footsteps fled forward nonstop. This jade piece was a gift presented to her by the little divine dragon's old man. It was an introduction to the great dimensional imprint's martial arts. Altogether, there were 3 layers. It's a pity she had only cultivated the first layer right now. Using it now, it was true she could kill Li Outyan. But in the future, she could never hope to advance a step forward with her great dimensional imprint. Unless it was at the last moment, Su Luo was still unwilling to part with this jade piece. Boom! Another bold and powerful palm strike attacked towards Su Luo's back. Another mouthful of blood burst forth from Su Luo. Her chest was covered with blood. Su Luo still ran as before, always running, even though her figure was already swaying and rocking, crooked to the east then falling to the west. Yet she never had any intention to stop. Su Luo did not take note of the fact that the fiery red stone she had concealed in her chest pocket was continuously absorbing the blood Su Luo sprayed out. The originally fiery red stone had slowly transformed and changed into a snow-white color like suet jade. It could be seen that it was clear and transparent. However, Su Luo was now occupied with fleeing. She basically had no time to take notice of this difference. The corner of Li Outyan's mouth hooked into a cold, detached and cruel smile as he pursued behind Su Luo. Very amusing. It really is too fun of a game. Li Outyan repeatedly sneered. Loathsome girl, to exterminate you in one move, with regards to before, is simply too much of a blessing for you. Since you want to run, then just run. A cat chasing a mouse would not grab it all at once. It would unceasingly tease the mouse. After having played enough, then it would catch the mouse. Li Outyan, at this moment, also had this kind of plan. The palm strikes he attacked Su Luo with only had 30% of his strength. This was why Su Luo would vomit blood time and time again, while still having not yet lost her life. Chapter 468, Mountain of Flames 3. If he was to attack with all of his strength, considering his strike style as a 7th rank expert, very likely, after one move, Su Luo's entire person would become a meat patty. The pitiful Li Outyan, he eternally wouldn't understand what was called nip the problem at the bud, and would instead suffer harm. At this point of time, he was toying with Su Luo, dallying with her who was under his complete control. Very soon, he would understand what was called regret. Li Outyan slapped another attack towards Su Luo's back. Su Luo felt that her vertebrae on her back was about to be misaligned. She sprayed out another mouthful of blood. Her footsteps stumbled, and she almost kneeled on the spot. Presently, Su Luo's speed had already become very slow. Her body was tottering on the verge of collapse. Her feet moved with great difficulty, and her eyesight was blurry and hazy. She could only preserve a little consciousness, as if in the next second, she would lose consciousness and fall to the ground. Mentally, she realized that Li Outyan was toying with her. He wanted to slap her to death like cooking a frog in warm water. And this was her only chance to escape with her life. Li Outyan basically did not know that not far ahead were dangerous grounds that would give her a lifeline. If he knew, very likely, he would use a killing move on the spot. Su Luo dragged her heavy steps. Even receiving the strikes time and time again, she still moved forward with great difficulty, moving forward. Her hand tightly clenched that jade piece. No, still hadn't arrived at the last minute. She must continue to persevere. The road to being an expert was covered with thorns. She received such small injuries, and she would take out her hidden trump card? No, she could still hold on. Su Luo swayed. Her sweat was mixed with the blood on her face, as she resolutely shook her head. The little divine dragon had already been placed back into her space earlier. Otherwise, with his protectiveness towards his master, he would definitely shield her. Because Su Luo understood, she could not allow more meaningless casualties. In her space, the little divine dragon stood up on both hind legs, nervously leaning on the wall in her space, excitedly slapping the wall. Had they arrived at last? Su Luo's complexion was wan and weak. She wiped away the blood at the corner of her mouth, as it lifted slightly into a clear smiling expression. Looks like this time, Li Outyan would regret it again. Up ahead, a valley of flames appeared. She could not see the end to this valley. It seemed endless. And just that abruptly appearing in front of Su Luo. In its surroundings, all around was an air of miasma, a blackish area, surging with confusing pitch-black smoke, and the air was terrifyingly, roasting hot to breathe. If this uninhabited island still had signs of human habitation, the other side would definitely advise Su Luo against this place. This valley of flames was the most dangerous place on this isolated island. Even an 8th-ranked expert wouldn't enter it casually. Nobody knew how strong this valley of flames was, or how wide. One only knew that the inside was very dangerous. The people who entered never came out again. In its surroundings, besides the blackish miasma of gas, there was still another fervent, fiery, roasting heat. A broiling, flaming heat that could roast a person dry. Behind her, Li Outyan once again sent a palm attack sweeping towards her. This time, Su Luo didn't use any defense and loosened her entire body. When that powerful palm wind strike got closer, Su Luo's body borrowed the wind power under the control of this palm strike and flew up, light as a feather. She was tossed forward by the impact from the strength of this palm strike only. In the effort of the blink of an eye, Su Luo's figure now vanished into the pitch-black valley of flames. Li Outyan saw Su Luo's trace being lost in a flash, and he couldn't help but be greatly startled. His pair of eyes rigidly stared at that pitch-black valley of flames. "Loathsome girl!" Li Outyan shouted and snarled. Finally, he firmly slapped his own head. He was truly an idiot. Why was it that he always couldn't remember the lesson from before? Every time, he would say to himself, it would be good to directly kill her. It would be pretty good to directly smash her into meat patty. But every time. Chapter 469, Mountain of Flames 4. Every time, he always wanted to torment her, ruthlessly torment her. But every time, just like this, he would let this loathsome girl to escape. Li Outyan was so infuriated his face was flushed and again, it turned ashen in a moment. He wished he could slap dead his own pig brain in one move. In front of him, clearly this was the Valley of Flames. He had an ice attribute. Fire and ice engender, and mutually subdue each other. It would take a longer time to eliminate the other. If the flames in this Valley of Flames were inferior to his ice, then he would occupy the absolute advantage. And so, the entire Valley of Flames would be no effort at all with regards to him. But it was very unfortunate. The intensity of the flames in this Valley of Flames were extremely strong, far exceeding his strength in comparison. If he was to go in very quickly, he would be swallowed by the tongues of flames. Even so, making Li Outyan sit here and wait for death, he absolutely was unlikely to do so. Li Outyan gave a cold snort, and condensed his spirit strength around his entire body. Very quickly, a white layer of frost appeared at his side, separating him from the surrounding atmosphere. Charge! Li Outyin gave an enormous shout. A powerful force was sent to his feet. His body was like a spring charging into the hole. His speed was so fast, he only left a faint afterimage behind. Speaking of Su Luo, she was slapped by Li Outyin's palm strike into the Valley of Flames, and was only able to crawl up after a long time. Looking from the outside, the entire valley felt blackish. Everywhere there was the swirl of fireworks. After truly ending up inside, was Su Luo able to personally experience this? The entire valley was encircled in all directions by mountain peaks. In every direction was areas of brilliant red mountain ranges. These were areas of the Valley of Flames. Resplendent, glorious red volcanoes extended nonstop to the sky, seeming to be on the border of the glowing sunset. As it was the same color, it was difficult to distinguish where the glowing sunset ended and where the fiery flames began. Observing while standing on the outside, maybe you would feel this was extremely beautiful, something to feast one's eyes upon. Standing within the Valley of the Flames, personally experiencing it, only then could you perceive the terrifying ferocity of the Valley of Flames. Fortunately, Su Luo's body contained the fire attribute. With everything regarding fire, she naturally had an affinity to it. Therefore, even though the temperature of the fire was very high, but it was still within a bearable range for her. Li Outyin, if you have the ability, then come in chasing after me. Su Luo covered the tightening pain in her chest as the corner of her mouth hooked into a sneer. The fire attribute against ice, the water attribute naturally had the strength to control it. Within this Valley of Flames, Li Outyin's ice attribute strength would be substantially restricted. His strength would be greatly reduced. Su Luo didn't stay too long at the entrance to the Valley of Flames. On the contrary, she continued to go deeper inside. She believed that according to Li Outyin's stupid self-confidence, he absolutely would not idly wait for opportunities. He would still be in a hurry to jump in to pursue her. Therefore, she must draw the opponent into the depths of the Valley of Flames. This was because the deeper you went, the higher the temperature of the flames on the ground would be. Didn't know for how long she had walked. Su Luo could feel that the temperature here, very soon, would already exceed the limit of what she could withstand. She stopped just now, laboriously leaning against a rock, gasping for breath. Soon afterwards, she took out a handful of spirit restoration pills from her space. These intermediate efficiency level spirit restoration pills outside were worth thousands of gold, whereas she was stuffing it into her mouth one by one, like chewing on balls of candy, simply too extravagant. All of a sudden, Su Luo felt a difference at her chest. She felt around with her hand and discovered that she, in a moment of desperation, actually hadn't put that fiery red stone into her space. Rather, in passing, she had tucked it into her chest pocket. Under that kind of situation surrounded by perils, unexpectedly, she hadn't lost it. Her luck really was too good. Su Luo took out that piece of fiery red stone. However, when she had felt around for that piece of stone, she sensed something was wrong. Originally, a rough stone that was heated to a roasting temperature. Why was it that it felt warm and cool to the touch? Su Luo's heart was very curious. Immediately, she took it out, determined to have a look. She couldn't help but to be greatly shocked. Chapter 470, Mountain of Flames 5. The originally vivid, fiery, flame-colored stone now was like a gentle suet jade. It gave off the white shining luster of gems, clear and transparent, seeming as though it could reflect a person's image. What was going on? Suddenly, Su Luo was extremely puzzled. Just when Su Luo was still puzzled despite much thought, behind her came the light sounds of footsteps. Su Luo was immediately alarmed. Tossing this stone into her space, she changed directions and immediately hid behind a huge boulder. Su Luo curbed her breathing, not allowing herself to produce even a trace of sound. Very quickly, at where Su Luo was standing just now, a person's shadow appeared. One could see that his entire body was wrapped in frost. His whole body was a shining white, penetrating through with traces of cool air. However, the surrounding air temperature was too blistering hot, to the extent that he needed to release spirit force to maintain the frost covering, so as to lower the temperature around his body. Li Outyin. He actually chased her all the way into the Valley of Flames. The corner of Su Luo's mouth hooked into an icy, sly smile. Sure enough, not outside of her expectations, Li Outyan didn't wait outside idly for opportunities. Rather, he rushed in to chase after and kill her. Good, very good. Now Li Outyan's eyebrows were knotted tightly. Just now, he could still sense the loathsome girl's breath. Why did it all of a sudden vanish? Li Outyan condensed the spirit power to his ears. Suddenly, his right ear trembled slightly. Immediately, Li Outyan's body spread open like a legendary large bird. Similar to an eagle swooping down, he abruptly rushed towards Su Luo's location. Loathsome girl. Accept death. In order to kill this loathsome girl, he was toyed with time and time again. He was simply battered and exhausted. Just recalling what had happened so far, Li Outyan's heart immediately boiled with a strong killing intent that was hard to describe with words. But this time, seeing he was about to use a killing move, unexpectedly, Su Luo hadn't escaped. The corner of Li Outyan's mouth hooked into an ice-cold sneer. His palm strike whistled by, carrying with it threads of frost. Su Luo's eyes had a cold and ridiculing meaning. One could only see both her hands form a seal and lots of medium-sized fireballs gathered around her body. This place was the Mountain of Flames. With regards to Su Luo, it was like a fish in water, or a bird in trees. With regards to Li Outyan, it was like a dragon trapped in a sandbar, or a tiger leaving behind the flat lands. There was a limitless supply of fire in the surrounding. Su Luo effortlessly condensed out a countless number of flames. One could only hear a boom sound of explosion. A countless number of earth-shattering fireballs madly rushed forth towards Li Outyan's whole body. It was like a tide surging up towards the sky. Only now did Li Outyan find out that Su Luo, this loathsome girl, actually had the fire attribute. He was gnashing his teeth in regret. It was no wonder that this loathsome girl dared to plunge into the Valley of Flames. It was not surprising that she dared to entice the enemy deeper into this valley. As it turned out, she was a fire system mage. Li Outyan momentarily did not investigate, and was toyed with by Su Luo until he was flustered. However, the difference in strength between both sides was too great. Very quickly, Li Outyan was able to calm down and wasn't like before, where he was kicking out in a state of confusion. Loathsome girl, you dare to resist. Courting death. Li Outyan was so infuriated that his complexion was flushed. One after another, ice blades that were so densely packed together and so numerous as to be uncountable, were like 10,000 arrows, madly rushing to bore a hole in Su Luo's heart. Li Outyan did not believe this finishing blow, that only a 7th rank could comprehend, could still be withstood by this loathsome girl. Su Luo saw the countless number of ice blades attacking towards her body, a vigilant expression flashing through her eyes. At the same time, one could only see her roll very quickly into the pile of flames on the side. Sizzle, SSSSS, the countless number of ice blades shot into the pile of flames, and was covered by the high temperature of the flames. Immediately they were turned into vapor. Li Outyan, seeing this, at once became so furious that his eyes turned red. Just when all of his attention was focused on Su Luo's body, suddenly, a white-colored little puppy appeared behind him. It seemed as if, all of a sudden, he had dropped from the sky. Chapter 471, Mountain of Flames 6. Quickly, he opened up his little mouth, and a huge fireball immediately shot out from his mouth and smashed heavily towards Li Outyan's head. The fire attribute was only one of the many attributes that the little divine dragon had. Moreover, as a proud member of the dragon race, his body's fire attribute was a lot more superior when compared to the human race's fire attribute. This mouthful of dragon's breath puffed out a 3rd type of true fire. It was one that Su Luo would need to cultivate with great effort unceasingly to attain, while the little divine dragon's fire attribute at birth was already naturally the 3rd type of true fire. As long as he wanted to use it, it would be alright. This was also one of the countless times that Su Luo admired and envied the little divine dragon's gift as a member of the dragon race. The dragon race was truly Mother Earth's favorite darlings. The huge fireball, which contained a trace of the 3rd type of true fire, abruptly smashed towards Li Outyan's head. All of Li Outyan's attention was placed on Su Luo's body, momentarily. He didn't check until he sensed an approaching danger. He then subconsciously tried to dodge the danger, while falling down towards the right side. That huge dangerous fireball swept by his left shoulder. It deserved to be called the third kind of true fire of the dragon race. Li Outyan's left shoulder had been swept a little by it, and the frost in that area was thawed in a flash. It also left behind a subtle scar in that spot on his left shoulder. His defense was actually damaged. Moreover, his defense was broken by a puppy that could spit out a fireball. Li Outyan stared with wide eyes at that little puppy jumping around among the forest of rocks, betraying an unimaginably incredulous expression. This little puppy in front of his eyes was definitely an unusual object. The fireball's killing power that it puffed out, compared to all the fire system experts he fought before, was much more formidable. Li Outyan reacted instantly without taking time to think. He pushed using both legs and jumped up. Both of his palms at the same time released an inexhaustible force that was awe-inspiring, energetic, and also very threatening. Li Outyan finally saw things clearly. In this valley of flames, his ice attribute was very seriously suppressed. Even though he could use it with great difficulty, its strength was also decreased tremendously. The little divine dragon let out a sharp long howl. One could only see him spring left and right on top of the rocks, jumping about nimbly and changing directions non-stop. Li Outyan stared distractedly with powerful palms, completely lacking a way to catch him. Li Outyan was teased by the little divine dragon, until he nearly directly wailed out loud. Now Su Luo had already climbed out of the pile of flames, with her head and face covered in grime. Fortunately, when she rolled in, she had used the power from her wood system to wrap up her entire body. In addition, with her own body's fire attribute, therefore, she only suffered minor wounds. Su Luo noiselessly appeared at Li Outyan's back. The corner of her mouth was evoked into a cold smile. Suddenly, one could only see a huge dimensional handprint hovering over Li Outyan's head, similar to a huge towering rock. Smash! Su Luo shouted. Simultaneously, the huge dimensional handprint ruthlessly smashed down upon Li Outyan's head. Li Outyan, right now, was busy attacking the little divine dragon who had a speed that was fast, and was nimble to a strange extent. Wherefore would he have time to attend to Su Luo? Even more so when he had never felt that Su Luo's strength was worth paying any attention to. The huge dimensional handprint smashed down from the sky. It was too late for Li Outyan to avoid. One could only hear the echo of a heavy thump sound, as the huge dimensional handprint ruthlessly smashed on top of Li Outyan's head. It was a pity Su Luo's strength differed too much from Li Outyan's strength. Therefore, the huge dimensional handprint essentially didn't do much harm to Li Outyan. Only the piece of frost on top of Li Outyan's head was ruthlessly shattered by Su Luo. Without the protection of the frost over his body, the heat swept in all at once. Li Outyan was infuriated until his complexion was ashen. He turned around, and once again placed all his attention on Su Luo's body. First, he decided to let that little puppy off for now, and focus all his strength on getting rid of Su Luo, this flea. Unexpectedly, he had just turned around to deal with Su Luo, when the little divine dragon that was concealed in the small cracks among the rocks appeared, leaping out in an impressive and lively manner. Chapter 472 Mountain of Flames 7. How great was the rapport and agreement between the little divine dragon and Su Luo? Without waiting for Su Luo to explain, he jumped really high and sprayed out a mouthful of dragon's breath towards Li Outyan's head. The dragon's breath contained the strange third kind of true fire. Whatever the fire encountered, it could burn, not leaving even dust behind. What kind of formidable power was that? Although Li Outyan once again condensed frost to use to protect his head, however, without waiting for him to finish condensing the frost, the little divine dragon had already puffed out a dragon's breath. Once this mouthful of dragon's breath descended, the protective layer of frost above Li Outyan's head was immediately blasted into fine powder. At the same time, his hair was also set on fire by the blast. Ah! A loud, ghostly and miserable howl was produced by Li Outyan's mouth, as he used a strong frost to smash towards his own head. But how could the third kind of true fire be so easy to extinguish? With regards to the third kind of true fire time, and time again crossing swords with the protective frost. When Li Outyan's hair was almost burned with practically nothing left, only then was Li Outyan finally able to extinguish the fire on his hair. Although it seemed like a long time, however, it only happened in the blink of an eye. Li Outyan was so infuriated he wailed like a child. The him right now cut such a sorry figure, like an old demon from the fields at the bottom of a mountain cliff. His hair was burned until nothing was left, with a face filled with uneven potholes. He was also missing an eye. The clothing on his body was bloodstained, damaged and tattered. Even the most dejected beggar looked better than him. One in front and another in the back, Su Luo and the little divine dragon attacked from both the front and rear side. Both of them were experts at mounting high-speed sneak attacks. As a result, Li Outyan at this point of time was simply weary from dealing with this. However, Li Outyan had already decided that no matter how the little puppy sneak attacked him, as long as he first killed Su Luo, this loathsome girl, then it would be fine. Now both of Su Luo's eyes were closed tightly. One by one, she formed hand seals with her hands, and the temperature surrounding Li Outyan suddenly rose. Loathsome girl, you think this way, you can win against me? Dream on. Li Outyan angrily shouted out loud. If you have the ability, then bring it on, why waste words? The corner of Su Luo's mouth lifted into a ridiculing smiling expression. Li Outyan had a gloomy expression. Suddenly, his arm extended as his fingers changed into steel-reinforced sharp claws. When he brandished it about, it was so strong as if it could rip apart the atmosphere. It issued SSSS acute noises. Su Luo's heart trembled with cold. Li Outyan was worthy of being called the Jade Lake Palace's second young master. Sure enough, when pressured to the bottom line, he indeed had lots of treasures. Su Luo's wrist shook slightly, and a huge dimensional handprint slapped towards Li Outyan's pair of sharp claws. The corner of Li Outyan's mouth hooked into a taunting sneer. You overestimate your abilities. With one wave of his hand immediately after, he ripped Su Luo's huge dimensional handprints into pieces. Afterwards, his pair of sharp claws, lacking any compassion, swept towards Su Luo's face. Su Luo did not avoid or dodge it. She merely stood there, coldly smiling at him. Li Outyan's heart thus shivered with cold. He still wasn't clear what had just happened, when suddenly, he felt his calf hurting. He lowered his head to look, and discovered that that white-colored little puppy, he had long ago lost track of actually, had taken a bit out of the flesh on his calf. It was not a small piece, but rather, it was a wound as large as a bowl-sized mouthful. A kind of acute pain passed through, and Li Outyan only felt a burst of dizziness in his head. Li Outyan's sharp claws did not slap towards Su Luo. Rather, it turned to attack the little puppy hanging from his calf. This little bastard was simply too hateful, repeatedly spoiling his important events. If it was not for his destructive interference time and time again, the loathsome girl would have been smashed into a meat patty by him long ago. One could only see Li Outyan slap his palms towards his own calf without the least bit of mercy, just like a person would ordinarily slap at a mosquito. But it was a pity that Li Outyan's IQ was clearly destroyed by his fury. He completely underestimated the little puppy's speed. Just at the time when that sharp claw slapped down. Chapter 473, Mountain of Flames, 8. One could only see the little divine dragon's quick movement. Even grabbing onto the sharp claw, all at once he rolled into Li Outyan's trouser leg. The pitiful Li Outyan, with his palm, slapped down and heavily landed a blow on the wound that had a huge piece of flesh bitten off. Immediately, he started to bare his fangs in pain. The veins on his forehead exploded out. Even tears almost burst out. The hateful little divine dragon nimbly, like a divine light, bored around in his trouser leg. Li Outyan was flustered. He simply did not know what would be best to do with him. He was so anxious that he yelled loudly while running around in circles. This little divine dragon, this little thing, he could have crawled anywhere, but against all reason, his head bore into Li Outyan's crotch area. A paw swiping down the pain that suddenly arrived made the rim of Li Outyan's eyes fill with tears. Go die, go die. Li Outyan was so angry, he sent a palm strike towards that area on his own body. However, in view of that mistake from before, this time, the extent of his movements wasn't very big. Also, as a result of this, he was able to preserve the root for future offspring. A derisive smile flashed through Su Luo's eyes. Such a good opportunity. If she was not to use it, then she could indeed be called foolish. Su Luo took out that deeply cold dagger from her sleeves and noiselessly approached Li Outyan's back. No sooner said than done. The dagger in Su Luo's hand flashed by like a white light and slid towards Li Outyan's throat. If it was an ordinary person, naturally, a line of blood would appear, and afterwards he would die with eyes open, falling to the ground. But it was Li Outyan. Su Luo didn't expect that his defense would be so formidably strong. The little divine dragon could break his protection, but her dagger was unable to do so. When she was behind him slitting his throat, she could feel that very hard layer. No matter how great the strength she used, she could not slice through it. She didn't expect that the solidness of Li Outyan's physical body had reached this degree. Her slash did not enter. Su Luo hurriedly retreated backwards. However, now it was somewhat late. At this moment, Li Outyan had already been driven nearly insane by one person and one beast. Now why should he even care about hiding any trump cards? One could only see Li Outyan smile coldly. Suddenly, he raised his sleeves, and a thick greenish-black vine shot out from his sleeves, attacking abruptly towards Su Luo's body. Too obscure. Li Outyan, besides being an ice system, he actually was still a wood system mage. Before, she had never heard this from anyone. Su Luo turned around and immediately ran, and according to the S-shaped curve, she rapidly withdrawed. Li Outyan's ice system was restricted by the Valley of Flames. However, in comparison, the restriction to his wood system was much less. This thick greenish-black vine seemed to have grown eyes, tightly nipping behind Su Luo, not letting go. Moreover, its speed was so fast as to be astonishing. Before, Su Luo was slapped almost unconscious by Li Outyan, with all her 5 viscera and 6 bowels receiving serious wounds, and her strength had suffered a great disturbance. She staggered along while running, but without running more than a few steps in front of her, a huge rock appeared. Just when she wanted to take a detour, that thick greenish-black vine had already arrived to attack. Pow! The thick greenish-black vein thrashed heavily towards Su Luo's back, immediately striking Su Luo, causing her to tumble down to the ground. Without waiting for her to crawl back up, that thick greenish-black vine had already swept Su Luo up, binding her entire body. From head to toe, neatly bundled together, hanging high up from the tree by the vine, floating and being freely pushed around by the wind. This image was very similar to the traitorous opposition, hanging on top of the city wall. Su Luo simply wanted to cry but lacked the tears, extremely helpless. The little divine dragon, seeing his own little master being hung like this, just like a person being supported up waiting to be roasted dry, was immediately unhappy. One could only see him loudly roar and snarl a woo at Li Outyan, jumping from in front of him to his back. All of a sudden, he squeezed into his back and bit down ruthlessly on his buttocks. Pooh! The little divine dragon disdainfully spit out that piece of fresh flesh from his mouth. Chapter 474. A Matter of Life and Death. 1. Li Outyan was simply about to be driven mad from fury by this smelly puppy. He covered his butt. It was so painful that tears nearly ran down. This puppy was even disdainful of his flesh. Didn't it make a mistake? This little puppy hopped and jumped around on his body, jubilantly creating a disturbance. And it was also nimble with lots of lively changes. Its speed was surprisingly fast. Li Outyan was honestly helpless for lack of a better option. He simply had no way to deal with this little puppy. As a result, Li Outyan turned around to deal with Su Luo again. Now in front of Su Luo was a cave of flames. The entrance to the cave was wide open. Inside, a raging inferno was burning. Its burning heat directly hit her face like an endless ocean of flames. The flames inside didn't know how many times stronger it was compared to the ones outside. Li Aotang controlled that thick greenish-black vine and directly tossed Su Luo, who was bundled up like a Zhongzi one, into the cave. Such fervent hot flames, practically giving a person a painful burning sensation, like that of the skin being peeled from the flesh. Without even going in, Su Luo was already roasted until she was dizzy with blurred vision. If she was tossed in, then wouldn't it be too much? Just at this most thrilling second, the little divine dragon sprang up and leaped toward her. Seeing that he was already too late, a bright idea suddenly occurred to the little divine dragon. His two little paws hung onto the greenish-black vine, and his sharp white teeth bit down ruthlessly into the greenish-black vine. One could only hear a clear snapping sound, as the thick greenish-black vine actually snapped into two in response under that little mouth. Su Luo, who was barely an arm's distance away from the cave, suddenly fell to the ground, and again escaped a calamity. Su Luo patted her chest with some lingering fear. Fortunately, the little divine dragon had a bright idea. Otherwise she would have been tossed into the cave of flames, and burned into traces of light smoke, flying away. Li Outyin saw that Su Luo was saved once again, and his own effort had fallen short once again. He was so furious that his complexion became flushed, and the veins on his hands burst out violently. Loathsome girl. Watch this move. The first time didn't work. Li Outyin again used the greenish-black vine a second time, trying to bind Su Luo. However, a matter that astonished him occurred. He discovered a little thing hanging at the end of the greenish-black vine. After a closer look, he saw that it was actually that little puppy who kept ruining his plans time and time again. One could see his two little paws firmly clamping down on that greenish-black vine, his little mouth continuously nibbling on it, gobbling it up. The greenish-black vine that he had spent so many years nurturing to this length was actually consumed by his little mouth, inch by inch. In the end, what is this organism? Would a normal dog eat plants? Li Outyin felt both temples on his forehead pulse and violently jump out. His head simply ached too painfully. At the moment, he also didn't want to bind Su Luo, and directly urged the greenish-black vine to move, trying to bind the little puppy. Such a small target. If he was to bind it, then couldn't he directly pinch it to death? But Li Outyin's mistake was that his brain was muddled from anger. Since the little divine dragon could bite the greenish-black vine into pieces, then how could he be bound by it? Indeed, in the beginning, the little divine dragon was bound like a zongzi. But very quickly, a hole appeared in the area near his mouth. Moreover, this hole became increasingly bigger. Finally, the little divine dragon easily came out from inside it. Li Aotain, with a dumbstruck expression, stared at the little puppy that came out from the vine, and immediately, he slapped his own head, speechlessly looking to the sky. This pig brain of his simply was a pig head. He was resigned, really resigned to this fate. This little puppy was really not an ordinary dog. It was simply more frightening than the dragon race. He conceded that he couldn't deal with it. Li Outyin originally thought he could very quickly slap Su Luo to death, but after experiencing setbacks again and again, it made him realize the current situation. He had already stayed inside for too long. If he stayed longer like this, his spirit power would very quickly be exhausted. Thus, he must kill the loathsome girl within the shortest amount of time. One zongzi is a mixture of sticky rice wrapped in bamboo, reed or other flat leaves. The area where I'm from uses a sweet mixture of sticky rice with jujube, otherwise known as the Chinese red dates. In southern parts of China, the stuffing mixture is more salty, using meats and other protein. I remember growing up it was only eaten during special occasions. Now I can find it anytime in Flushing, Queens, NYC. Wiki article link. Chapter 475. A Matter of Life and Death. 2. Li Outyin once again turned his attention to focus on dealing with Su Luo. No one knew when a layer of snowflakes appeared in his hand. The 6-pointed corners of the snowflakes were as sharp as daggers, glittering like frost and snow, all arriving to attack Su Luo. Before Su Luo had dropped down from a high place, again, it jolted her wounded 5 viscera and 6 bowels, triggering the pain from before. Now, she was sitting on the ground leaning on the rock to rest. Even if she wanted to move a step, it would be seriously challenging. Seeing the hexagon-shaped snowflakes approaching closer, Su Luo got up with great difficulty, and like a carp, she rolled behind a rock. This hot boiling rock served as her shield. However, before Su Luo could stand firm, she saw that half-broken, greenish-black vine directly wrap up the rock in front of Su Luo, casting it aside. Su Luo was immediately revealed, and was underneath those countless number of snowflakes hidden weapons. The little divine dragon had already leaped up, blocking in front of Su Luo. Now he was whirling around Su Luo with her in the center, continuously spraying out mouthfuls of dragon's breath that was boiling hot, pitter-patter. Dragon's breath flowed continuously. The snowflakes were already restrained by the formidable power of the Valley of Flames, and having been sprayed by the little divine dragon's dragon breath, its might was again greatly decreased. Even though it shot towards Su Luo's body, it also turned merely into a tickle. Liao Yan, as it turns out, your 7th rank was merely like this. The corner of Su Luo's mouth hooked into a taunting sneer. Her thin eyebrows poked up slightly, with a smile that was not quite a smile. She looked at Li Aotian. A trace of a shady, malicious and pungent radiance flashed through Li Aotian's eyes, and one could only see him burst into loud laughter. It is merely like this? Ha ha ha, loathsome girl. Then let me show you what is called merely like this. Accept death. Abruptly, the ground where Su Luo stood, in a split second, sprouted numerous ice thorns. Su Luo suddenly jumped up. But just at this time, kaboom! An acute sound of the sky splitting could be heard. Su Luo turned her eyes to look. A startled and alarmed thought actually flashed through them. One could only see that originally thick greenish-black vine, in a split second, grow by more than 10-fold. It was 10 times as thick and solid, with its strength also increasing by the same amount. What was going on? In the end, what did Liao Yan do? How could this greenish-black vine suddenly grow abruptly by 10-fold? However, there was already no time for Su Luo to think much more. On Su Luo's right side was that cave of flames, and this greenish-black vine, which was aggressively murderous-looking, was starting at the left and moving to the right. It swept past like it was about to totally annihilate everything. Thump, one could only hear the noise of a hit. Su Luo's body was rolled up and lifted high, and made a parabolic arc in the air. She was smashed far into the cave of flames. A mournful howl of grief came from the little divine dragon's mouth. One could only see his body jump up, following closely after Su Luo's body, and together, they landed deep into the cave of flames. No matter how much danger was ahead, regardless of whether it was life or death, he would always choose to face it together with his little master. Ha 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 ha. Seeing Su Luo falling into the cave of flames, Liao Yan was unable to suppress it anymore. With both hands at his hips, he started to laugh ha-ha wildly. I have taken revenge, I have been avenged. He finally put this loathsome girl to death. He recalled how he had pursued her all the way here, how many hardships he had suffered, how difficult this task was. Also, how many times he was tricked into a difficult situation. All the past events were vivid in his mind, simply extremely unbearable to recollect. But now, everything was good. The greatest trouble in his heart and belly was finally eliminated. The loathsome girl had died at last. Even if she had the fire attribute, so what? Inside the cave of flames, the temperature was absolutely something her, as a little 3rd rank could not bear. As long as he thought of this loathsome girl now being burned into black coke, Liao Yan would beam with joy. He was more excited than obtaining any kind of treasure. All of a sudden, a slight fluctuation came through the air. Very quickly, a dark shadow appeared. Nangong Luyan came flying over. Chapter 476, A Matter of Life and Death 3. His current expression was grave, stern and indifferent, with both eyes glaring darkly at Liao Yan, as if he was a dead person. Where is Luo girl? Nangong Luyan had both hands behind his back. The depths of his eyes were as cold as a millennium-old glacier, and also like 10,000 years old snow that would never melt. With only one look, it could freeze someone in place, so that he was trembling in fear. Liao Yan was stunned, looking at the Nangong Luyan in front of him, as if he almost wasn't able to recognize him. The current Nangong Luyan, compared to before when they met at the cave entrance, and compared to any previous time, his imposing manner was many times stronger. It was just as if his entire person's quality had broken out and transformed. It was said that once one arrived at the 4th rank, it was a dividing line. Rank 5 to 7 was another dividing line. After the 8th rank, the whole body would break out and transform, thus truly entering the list of the continent's strongest experts. In front of Li Outyan's eye, regardless of imposing manner or expression, he gave others a feeling of being profoundly mysterious, causing them to tremble. This aura was just like his father's. Nangong Luyan, you've reached the 8th rank? Because Li Outyan was too shocked. Even his normally nimble speech stuttered a bit. Nangong Luyan indifferently swept him a glance, nodded his head slightly, and immediately asked again. Hand over Luo girl, and I'll spare your life. That is impossible. Li Outyan roared in an incredibly loud voice. The last time he had seen Nangong Luyan was half a year ago, and at that time, he was still at the peak of 6th rank. Just before, when they met, he had leaped to the 7th rank, and that was still acceptable. But now no more than a few days had passed, and he had actually advanced another rank. Within half a year, he had consecutively jumped 2 ranks. Moreover, he actually rose from the 6th rank to the 8th rank. These kind of difficult levels that other people exhausted their entire lives without being able to step across, he had actually directly leaped over. How could this let other people live? Li Outyan had originally believed that before, when he didn't die after having been struck by the spirit pinball, but instead was promoted a level, was already considered very fortunate. But compared to Nangong, he wasn't anything at all. That's impossible. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Li Outyan hugged his head, rocking back and forth. No matter what, he still would not believe that Nangong Luyan's cultivation speed was this fast. Nangong Luyan frowned, a cloudy, baleful expression flashing through his eyes. With a threatening cold aura, he said, Li Outyan, reply to this king's words. His Highness Prince Jin's patience was usually shorter than the length of a fingernail, the only exception being with a certain person. Hearing Nangong Luyan asking this, Li Outyan immediately stared blankly, and suddenly, he started laughing wildly out loud again. He laughed frantically and insolently, very pleased with himself. Nangong Luyan, you want to know the whereabouts of that loathsome girl? Ha ha ha. I will never tell you in this lifetime. Go look for her yourself. Li Outyan's had just finished speaking. Then he turned around, wishing to leave quickly. However, not even waiting for him to leave, Nangong Luyan's body was already in front of Li Outyan, blocking him. Along this entire road, was it you who was chasing to kill her? When Nangong Luyan opened his eyes to find that Luo girl wasn't there, and there were traces of a fight at the cave entrance on the spot, his heart became frenetic. Relying on his cool-headed brain and fine detailed insight, he searched the entire route here. He was actually accurate to perfection in his analysis. Li Outyan gave a cold laugh. If it was me who was chasing to kill her, what about it? Don't tell me that she shouldn't die. Li Outyan pointed at his face that had been disfigured by Su Luo's spirit pinball. That human not yet human demon, yet not a demon's appearance. Looking at that, who wouldn't feel nauseous? She deserves to die. Li Outyan's neck was tough and unyielding. His eye was filled with a cruel and vicious appearance. Nangong Luyan looked at him unmoving. The expression on his face was as tranquil as water. Suddenly, his hands were as quick as lightning as they grabbed hold of Li Outyan's neck and lifted him up high. In front of Nangong Luyan, Li Outyan discovered that he had absolutely no strength to resist. He unceasingly struggled as if on his deathbed, but discovered it was to no avail. Chapter 477. A Matter of Life and Death 4. Unless Nangong Luyan wished to release him, otherwise, regardless of how he resisted, it was all in vain. Li Outyan's heart was unreconciled. Obviously before, when he saw Nangong Luyan at the cave entrance, he was still at the strength of a 7th rank. At that time, if he was to fight with his life on the line, maybe he would still have the strength to resist. But now, going to speak or not, Nangong Luyan's long arms were like iron clamps, pinching Li Outyan's throat, obstructing air from getting in. Li Outyan, due to lack of oxygen, his complexion turned deep red. Very quickly, he violently nodded his head. I'll speak, but before that, you must answer a question from me. Li Outyan was still puzzled with regards to Nangong Luyan's advancement in levels, even after much thought. Speak. Nangong Luyan, in passing, tossed him to the ground. His gaze was ice-cold and indifferent as he glared at him. Li Outyan, who was tossed aside as if throwing trash, covered his throat, coughing and gasping for breath repeatedly. With great difficulty, he was able to restore a somewhat calm appearance. If I was to fight with you at the cave entrance that time, did I have a chance to win against you? Li Outyan unwaveringly stared at Nangong Luoyan. The latter indifferently glanced at him. The corner of Nangong Luoyan's mouth hooked into a hard, bloody and bitter smile. Could it be you didn't realize at that time this king was injured? Li Outyan looked at Nangong Luoyan in surprise. He really was wounded. The person that was injured really was him? Li Outyan immediately was stupefied. It seemed that Nangong Luoyan felt that he still hadn't struck a shocking enough blow, so he unhurriedly nodded his head. At that time, this king's life was hanging by a thread. It was not limited to you. Any random person that knows martial arts could easily have put this king to death. Unexpectedly, it was like this. Li Outyan suddenly was flabbergasted, staring at him with a blank and foolish expression. As it turned out, originally he was that close to an opportunity to kill him, so easily obtained. It was a pity, all the fault of his pig head, to actually fear and cower under Nangong Luoyan's strength from before, to the extent of not daring to suspect him, not daring to move against him. Damn it, really damn it. Li Outyan very ruthlessly slapped himself once in the face, making himself spit out a mouthful of blood from the slap. Now, it's your turn to tell this king speak. In the end, where is Luo girl? Nangong Luoyan looked at him indifferently, mentioning Su Luo, that loathsome girl. All of a sudden, Li Outyan exploded out into a fit of wild laughter. Ha 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 ha, Nangong Luoyan. As it turns out, there is also a person you care about, so you also have a weak point. Li Outyan couldn't help but to start laughing wildly. Before, he was suspicious all along about why Nangong Luoyan never chased after them. Until this moment, he finally could be considered to have really realized it. Nangong Luoyan had received a serious injury and was simply unable to protect her. If he didn't guess wrong, at that time, Nangong Luoyan was actually inside the cave. The loathsome girl, in order to draw him away, she had deliberately said that Nangong Luoyan went to look for food. Looked like this loathsome girl could be considered loyal and affectionate towards Nangong Luoyan. But now, she was already dead. Don't know what Nangong Luoyan would do after becoming aware of this news. Li Outyan knew that today, he would not be able to escape, so he might as well throw away his life and engrave a ghost in Nangong Luoyan's heart that he would never be able to get rid of. Thinking up to now, Li Outyan stopped his wild laughter and cast satirizing glances at Nangong Luoyan. A grand and stately, 2 meters tall real man, still needs the protection of a woman. Nangong Luoyan, you still have the face to live on this earth? Nangong Luoyan's expression was tranquil as he merely stared at him indifferently. Phoenix eyes narrowed slightly. Li Outyan gave a cold snort. Su Luo, that loathsome girl, in order to protect you, alone and by herself, drew me away. Along the way, she faced mortal dangers and barely escaped with her life countless times. Whereas you were cultivating soundly and safely under her protection. Chapter 478. A Matter of Life and Death 5. The hands at Nangong Luoyan's sides tightened slightly, his complexion condensed into frost. Li Outyan continued to sneer. But now she is dead. I simply killed her. What you owe her, you will never be able to pay her back. A woman he was deeply in love with, and the counterpart dearly loving him back. In order to save him, she paid with her life. Nangong Luoyan, today, a seed was planted in your heart. In the future, he was not worried that it would take root and germinate. A crazy, malicious sneer flashed through Li Outyan's eye. Nangong Luoyan, having heard what was said, his entire body immediately became motionless. Luo girl, she impossible. Both of Nangong Luoyan's eyes were scarlet, full of bloodshot veins. His long arms, with one grab, ferociously pinched Li Outyan's neck, and he furiously roared. You are speaking nonsense. If you continue to talk nonsense, believe it or not that this king will choke you to death. Simply choke you to death. Nangong Luoyan completely lost all of his rationality. With his very great strength, one could only hear the sound of coughing. And just like this, A bone in Li Outyan's neck was broken. Speak. In the end, where is she? Li Outyan tenaciously bit his mouth, refusing to yield. Nangong Luoyan was so furious that with one throw, he cast him aside, tossing him heavily to the ground. Li Outyan's mouth hooked into a sinister smile. One could only see him use up his last strength to pull at that piece of cut-off dragonstone. Once the cut-off dragonstone was dropped down, nobody would be able to turn around this hopeless situation. After going in, she would never be able to come out. Nangong Luoyan's gaze suddenly turned cold. Could it be that Luo Luo was inside the cave of flames? The so-called, even a fool after pondering thousands of times, could also be right once. Li Outyan, before death's door, finally became smart for once. He openly showed Nangong Luoyan his scheme, forcing Nangong Luoyan to make a choice. Once the cut-off dragonstone dropped, the die was cast. Those that go in would never be able to come out. However, whether Su Luo was inside or not, still alive or not, he would never tell. He merely threw this quandary of questions back to Nangong Luoyan. If he chose not to move, then probably he wouldn't be able to see Su Luo for the rest of his life. Or perhaps her skeletal remains. Or if he chose to rush in, then he might never come out for the rest of his life, and he would be burned to death while alive inside. The cut-off dragonstone fell with lightning speed. Nearly in the blink of an eye, Nangong Luoyan's body immediately flew up. His speed was like the attack of thunder, swift and oppressively severe, as if the space between heaven and earth were all swaying. He ruthlessly kicked his foot towards Li Outyan's throat, and afterwards, he borrowed the power of momentum to shoot with flying speed into the cave of flames. The cut-off dragonstone had already descended to the lowest point. One could only see Nangong Luoyan's body stuck flat to the surface of the ground like a bowling ball sliding inside. Just at the time when he slid inside, thump, the cut-off dragonstone smashed into the ground, producing a violent hitting sound, lifting up the countless dust particles from the ground. Nangong Luoyan avoided the danger. As for Su Luo, previously, she was slapped in by one of Li Outyan's palm strike. Su Luo's originally seriously injured body finally could not bear it anymore, and she directly passed out inside the cave. The little divine dragon tightly followed behind, and like a spring, plunged inside. Seeing Su Luo collapsed on the ground and remain unconscious, immediately, he was extremely worried. Hurriedly, he went up to rub against his little master. Originally, this little master would always accompany him to play. This time, she just lay there motionlessly, as if she would never wake up again. As he looked at the little master's complexion become scarlet red, the skin on her body was about to burn. The little divine dragon's heart was extremely anxious. His pair of monochrome, clear and limpid huge eyes was puffy and filled with tears. His eyes were very red and spun around Su Luo in circles, his little tail trembling back and forth from worry. Very quickly, he resolutely wiped away the tears in his swollen eyes, as he puffed out a ball of white mist, sending it to envelop Su Luo's body. The white mist contained a touch of chilliness. It was none other than frost that had yet to condense. Chapter 479. A Matter of Life and Death 6. If Su Luo was awake, very likely, she would be amazed again. Could it be that the little divine dragon also had all the elemental attributes? Just from what he had shown, he already had the fire, water, and lightning attribute. Now, added to it, was the ice attribute, worthy to be called Mother Earth's most partial to and favorite darling. This kind of gifted talent was simply in defiance of the natural order. But in the final analysis, the little divine dragon was merely a fifth rank, and had just recently left the infant phase. His strength wasn't that strong. Also, within this cave of flames, the temperature was still somewhat threatening to him. What's even more was that he needed to divert some attention to protecting Su Luo. Therefore, not long after, the little divine dragon was unable to hold on. He was hanging out his little pink tongue while panting for breath. Really tired. From birth until now, he hadn't been this tired. The little divine dragon's pair of eyes was puffy and full of tears. With a pitiful and wretched expression, he went to rub against Su Luo. Why was it that the little master still hadn't woken up? His water supply was almost depleted. He also couldn't enter that mystical place. unable to drink the spring water to replenish his strength. What to do? What to do? The little divine dragon was so anxious that his tail shook back and forth. He ran around Su Luo in circles nonstop. Right away, he saw his little master's skin turning scarlet red again. The little divine dragon had no other way. No matter how parched he was, he still condensed out a trace of white, frosty mist to envelop the little master. Just like this, while the little divine dragon was enduring the threat from the flames on the ground, at the same time, he was still puffing out the frosty air within his body to protect Su Luo. Very quickly, the originally moist from water, adorable little divine dragon started to wither, looking ill as he curled up into a little ball and lay on his stomach by Su Luo's side, staring at her. What to do? The little divine dragon's consciousness was starting to become fuzzy, when suddenly, a noise came from the surroundings, as if something had fallen down. However, very sleepy, really want to sleep, the little divine dragon gradually closed his eyes. Speaking of Nangong Luyan, like a shooting star, he flew in. His speed was so fast as to be astonishing. He had just entered when Nangong Luyan had a kind of bad premonition. The temperature outside was already quite high, but the temperature inside was astonishing. It was more than 10 times hotter than outside. Now there were boiling, raging flames all around, soaring to engulf everything. Even Nangong Luyan had a feeling of skin being peeled from flesh, let alone how Su Luo would feel. Nangong Luyan had a deeply worried expression, as he loudly yelled in all directions. Luo 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 girl Luo Luo. Each yell was louder than the one before. Each yell was more worried than before. If Luo girl really had fallen into the cave of flames, in such a long time, only heaven would know what could have happened. Nangong Luyan's fist was clenched tightly, that kind of consequences he simply didn't even dare to think about. All around, the flames soared to the sky, the fumes lingered on, resulting in low visibility. Nangong Luyan shouted until his mouth and tongue were dry, yet still didn't obtain any response. His heart was somewhat complicated. How much he wished that Li Outyan was just scheming against him, and how he hoped that Su girl was not inside this cave of flames. Nangong Luyan hadn't walked out for more than a few steps, when suddenly, his foot kicked something. It had also gave a tiny a woo barking sound and firmly tried to bite Nangong Luyan's calf. Nangong Luyan's reaction was extremely fast. Without waiting for it to bite down, he had already lifted it up. Little puppy? Nangong Luyan's expression immediately was overjoyed. He used a lot of strength to shake the little thing. Quick, wake up, quickly wake up, where is your master? This was Luo girl's spirit pet. Since it was here, then Luo girl was certainly not far away. The little divine dragon weakly half-squinted his eyes in concentration. His little paw pointed to the floor. The pitiful little divine dragon, after Nangong Luyan was done using him, was tossed aside, falling to the ground. The little thing miserably covered his little, but that was sore from the fall, shouting a woo towards Nangong Luyan's back. Its eyes were glistening with even more tears. Where would Nangong Luyan still have the time to attend to it? Chapter 480. A Matter of Life and Death 7. When with one glance he saw Su Luo on the ground, his entire heart lifted up very high, and in this split second he nearly suffocated. Luo 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 Luo. Nangong Luyan excitedly shook Su Luo. Seeing that she wouldn't wake up, Nangong Luyan pressed both hands to her heavenly spirit acupuncture point on her head, and poured a steady flow of spirit force into her body. In a daze, Su Luo felt her own body become light as a feather, as if her soul had flown outside of her body. She was walking inside a steel and cement-built modern city, with high-rise apartment buildings everywhere. There were cars, public transportation, a tide of people forming congestions in extreme chaos. On this cloudy road in the mountain, rose a dagger stabbing towards her chest. You really believed I liked you? In fact, for so many years, I was always just monitoring you. These bone-chilling words, that cold overcast sneer, was like a devil, repeating over and over again in her head. So painful, heart ached, her body also ached. All around was very hot. So hot she was about to shed a layer of skin, and her breathing nearly stopped. She felt her entire body was like being placed inside a stove, being roasted nonstop. Suddenly, a gentle breath slowly flowed in, like a vast and deep clear spring, extending to her 4 limbs and hundreds of bones. It saturated the skin that was roasted dry. Su Luo weakly opened her eyes halfway. The image that entered her eyes was Nangong Liuyun's extremely handsome face. Awake? Do you have anywhere that is uncomfortable? Su Luo opened up her throat, but could not speak. She fished out a cup of spring water from her space, slowly drank a mouthful. Then Su Luo finally was considered having woken up. When she was drinking, the little divine dragon sat in a kneeling posture in front of her. His pair of limpid eyes, full of misery, watched her with a feeling of having been aggrieved. Su Luo immediately laughed in spite of herself. She didn't draw more water, and directly picked up the little divine dragon, tossing him into her space. This place was too hot. Look at him. The fur on his body would very quickly be burnt from being roasted. He looked simply too pitiful. Seeing Nangong Liuyun's forehead covered with a thin layer of perspiration, Su Luo fetched another cup of water and handed to him. You should also drink. Nangong Liuyun nodded his head. His eyes betrayed his concern. How do you feel? Still feeling any pain? Su Luo nodded her head, then shook her head. For the time being, I can still bear it. I'm afraid as more time passes, I will not be able to hold on. The temperature in here, for her, was really too high. Nangong Liuyun nodded his head. Inside the cave of flames, even the color of the flames had changed. Inside the valley of flames that was the color of red clouds, it was still considered normal. But after entering the cave of flames, the deeper you went in, the deeper the color of the flames became. It gave people a faint feeling of burning pain, as if the skin was being frayed from the flesh. His Luo girl was okay for the time being, but her wounds were too grave. Very likely, she would not last long in this cave of flames. Nangong Liuyun's brows knotted, constantly thinking of a way out. Su Luo didn't know that the cut-off dragonstone had already dropped, and pulled at Nangong Liuyun's sleeves, slowly saying, We should quickly get out now. Your cultivation has already been restored. Just in time to help me get back at Li Outyin who bullied me. Humph, these few days, she was chased after running all over the place, feeling like a dog that had fallen into water. She had desperately fled in all directions. Now, the time had come for the reversal of the Wheel of Fortune. It was her turn to be tyrannical right back. Nangong Liuyun helplessly breathed out a sigh. If you are speaking of killing Li Outyin, actually, there is no need, because he is already dead. In the beginning, he pinched his neck until it broke. Afterwards, borrowing the force of momentum, he had kicked him again. He was already thoroughly dead long ago. Nangong Liuyun looked at Su Luo with tenderness, gently comforting her by stroking her soft hair. Girl, don't be afraid. This king will definitely find a way out, to take you home. Do you believe me? Immediately, Su Luo's heart was startled, listening to the meaning within Nangong Liuyun's words. Somehow, they couldn't go out. Chapter 481. A Matter of Life and Death. 8. Nangong Liuyun helplessly nodded his head. Yes, Li Outyin lowered the cut-off dragonstone. Suddenly Su Luo was speechless, silently staring at Nangong Liuyun. Clearly, you know what it means for the cut-off dragonstone to fall, and you still came in? Nangong Liuyun only smiled and pinched Su Luo's nose. Luo girl was inside. Even if it were mountains of daggers or sea of flames, this king will also enter. I must enter. Even though he was smiling, a serious expression penetrated through that smile, as he unblinkingly gazed at Su Luo. Su Luo humbly slanted her head away. This kind of deep feeling that held nothing back. How could she bear it? Cough, cough, cough. The intensity of the fire in the cave of flames was really too great. The temperature was red hot. Even if you had spirit power to protect the body, you could still feel the waves of scorching heat. Nangong Liuyun, without saying anything more, pressed his large palms against Su Luo's back, pouring a steady flow of spirit power into her body. The spirit force was divided into 2 parts. One part was to help her build a touch of defense within her body to withstand the roasting heat of the flames that assailed her. The other part was a lot gentler. It circulated inside Su Luo's body, warmly supporting her 5 viscera and 6 bowels. Before, Su Luo was chased by Li Outyin in order to kill her, until she fled in all directions, and was smashed by one fist after another. Her internal injuries were really serious. If she was not immediately treated, it would leave behind permanent residual effects. It was after quite a while before Su Luo waved her hand, indicating for Nangong Luoyan to stop. She moved to and fro for a long time, but Nangong Luoyan still hadn't taken notice of her. Su Luo couldn't help but to turn her head around to look, and couldn't help but to stop while staring blankly. Nangong Luoyan turned his face away. That pair of demonically charming and alluring phoenix eyes clearly were a little moist. Nangong! Su Luo tugged at his sleeves, swaying it slightly. I'm okay really. Nangong Luoyan sucked in a deep breath of air. From his position at her back, his arms encircled her into his embrace, tightly pinning her to his chest. His face was motionlessly buried between her head of hair and shoulders. His tone had a repressed, bloody, violent wrath. This king will give you an account for this. Nangong. What Su Luo wanted to say was interrupted by Nangong. This king knows. Li family is one of the 10 great families with influential roots and intertwined interests of unfathomable depths. But so what? Dare to bully this king's Luo girl. Then they must be prepared to have their entire family exterminated. Nangong Luoyan's tone didn't fluctuate, however. It possessed a chilliness that made people tremble in fear. However, for now, I still can't make a move. Could Luo girl wait a few days for this king to act? Nangong Luoyan's tone was very soft, like a goose feather brushing by, carrying a faint trace of guilt. Su Luo silently watched him for a while. She still remembered that day in Sunset Mountain Range, when he tossed her aside to run to save the Jade Lake's ferry. Whereas now, she had become a person he must protect under his wing. For her, he would choose to eliminate the entire Li family in the future. What virtues did Su Luo have to be able to make the majestic His Highness Prince Jin, who was looked at wishfully by all the women on this continent, that mighty Prince Jin would move to act to this extent for her? Su Luo was momentarily silenced, and this made Nangong Luoyan move his limbs in a somewhat panicked manner. He anxiously explained to her, "If you don't beat the snake to death, it will come back to cause you endless calamity. This king will take action at the time when the outcome is certain. Are you now blaming this king?" Su Luo slowly shook her head. He was as respected as a god, but in front of her, he would soften his voice and lower his dignity to ask for her favor. How could she still blame him? Su Luo smiled. "It's not urgent. Wait until I become strong, and we will go together to wipe out the Li family." Li Yaoyao chased her to kill her. Li Outyin also pursued her to kill her. It certainly could be considered that she and the Li family had formed a deep enmity and great hatred. Nangong Luoyan, all of a sudden, smiled, and he used more strength to rub Su Luo's head. "Good, it's a deal." Nangong Luoyan smiled somewhat joyfully. This could also be considered Luo girl's commitment to him, right? Chapter 482. A Matter of Life and Death. 9. Waiting until her strength matured to the extent of being able to exterminate the Li family. It was still very far away. Then, within this short amount of time, at least she had given him a promise. "What are you smiling about?" Su Luo saw him smiling somewhat foolishly, and she suspiciously asked. "Laughing about you, this girl, having bitten off more than you can chew now. Don't even know if we can leave here or not." Nangong Luoyan, in a very good mood, flicked her forehead. Ouch! Su Luo covered her forehead and rolled her eyes at Nangong Luoyan. Immediately after, she also laughed. Her dimples were as beautiful as flowers. In the previous incarnation, when she was together with Yan Qi, he was always gentle and would never tease her. The methods of interaction between them was as ordinary as water. Originally, she thought that this was the normal way people in love would interact. But now, with Nangong Luoyan's appearance, he had toppled her way of thinking. Being protected and lovingly spoiled by a person turned out to feel like this, unfamiliar and strange, but making a person's heart burst with joy. "What are you thinking about? With this kind of very happy appearance?" Nangong Luoyan sat by her side. His palm was placed around her Lingtai meridian, one, since the start, ready at any time to protect her body. Su Luo laughingly smiled. "Obviously I'm laughing at you. Laughing at this king? Su Luo nodded her head seriously. It couldn't have been easy for you to be born so gifted and obtain everything in this lifetime. Look at you, status, innate gift, martial arts, appearance of these items. Which ones the gods weren't partial to you? Partial to the extent of being difficult to endure. But you are such a fool, saying you would abandon it all, and then just abandoning it, going so far as to come to accompany me in throwing one's life away. There wouldn't be another person as foolish as you in this world. Nangong Luoyan gave 2 snorts of dissatisfaction. If this king is a fool, then you are an idiot. Nonsense. Su Luo retorted back unconvinced. Nangong Luoyan, with a straight face, explained to her. Obviously lacking the strength and still pretending to be powerful. Clearly, you knew Li Aoyan was itching to kill you, and you still deliberately drew him away. For this king, you set aside the chance to live. You tell me, if your variety of melon isn't an idiot too, then what kind of melon is it? Or is it stupid? Mentioning this matter, Nangong Luoyan's heart was especially complicated, with anger and sweet happiness existing at the same time. He was itching to grab Su Luo and very fiercely smack her but a few times, giving her a memorable lesson about making her cherish herself more from now on. But it was also because it showed that she cared about him, that the corner of his mouth couldn't help but tilt up from being in a very good mood. Setting aside her chance to live for another person, Su Luo secretly stuck out her tongue. She wasn't that great, okay? Clearly this was the best plan, because only when Nangong's cultivation was restored would they have a chance to win. Seeing Nangong Luoyan with that immensely proud, self-satisfied and elated appearance, she felt too embarrassed to expose the truth. All around were golden-colored flames, like fire snakes dancing wildly about. That roasting hot temperature could almost transform a person into ashes. In this kind of critical situation, the feelings between the two also heated up rapidly immediately after. Su Luo felt somewhat unwell and pushed Nangong Luoyan. I cannot move. You go search the surroundings for another way out. Nangong Luoyan was definitely not reassured about Su Luo, so he shook his head. No, this king will carry you on his back, we will go together. Not long ago, he had already experienced the deep pain of nearly losing her. How could he now leave her alone by herself again in this cave of flames? Before Su Luo could react, Nangong Luoyan had already placed her on his shoulders, resting on his strong, powerful back, and experiencing the warmth his back. All of a sudden, from out of nowhere, Su Luo felt a trace of security. It was as if resting on his back was similar to growing underneath a large tree beneath the blue sky. The road before her had him blocking the wind and protecting her from the rain. No matter what, she did not need to worry, did not need to be afraid of anything. In the wake of him slowly walking forward, Su Luo's mind instantly recalled a short paragraph. It was the words Quang Quang 3, wrote that Su Luo once saw in a magazine. 1 Lingtai Meridian. This is the acupuncture point on your back between the 6th and 7th thoracic vertebrae of the spine. 2. Idiot. This entire sentence is a play on the Chinese character. The character refers to any type of melon or gourd, while the word for idiot and fool both contains this character. Idiot in Chinese is, while fool is, my choice of translations since both have similar meaning. Su Luo called Nangong Luoyan a fool, then he called her an idiot. Finally Nangong Luoyan is asking her to choose whether she is an idiot or stupid. Stupid also has the melon character. 3 Quang Quang. After a Google search, this name is of a Japanese writer and blogger. She wrote a book, and I think it was translated into Chinese, so the paragraph was lifted from her book. Chapter 483. A Matter of Life and Death 10. She said, all my life, I longed to be well treasured by a man, put in an appropriate place, maintained carefully, averted from being frightened, removed from bitter hardship, prohibited from wandering everywhere aimlessly and homeless, prevented from being alone with no branches to depend on. But that person I know, I had known all along he would never come. Her Mr. Right would never come. But Su Luo, who was resting on Nangong Luoyan's wide warm back, the corner of her mouth rose slightly. Her Mr. Right. Could it be he was already here? Nangong Luoyan, seeing that Su Luo had her head buried in the crevice between his head and shoulder, couldn't help being somewhat anxious. With a deeply worried tone, he said, "Are you feeling unwell again?" While saying this, he was about to put Su Luo down, so he could pour more spirit power into her body. Su Luo stopped his hand, a shallow smile on her mouth. "It's nothing. Let's continue to look. I hope we can get out faster. If you feel unwell, remember, you must tell me, okay?" Nangong Liuyun's expression was stern and solemn, repeatedly making it clear. Su Luo buried her face in the nest of his shoulder, nodding slightly. In this lifetime, if she wanted to find another person that treated her this well, the chances are that it would be very unlikely. The betrayal in her previous life had thoroughly closed her heart. Nangong Liuyun's appearance, little by little, like a fine rain, had silently oiled the door in her heart, opening it. She wished to give herself a chance, and also hoped to give Nangong Liuyun a chance. Since it was so, then she would abide by the 3-month agreement to be together, and take a look. Su Luo's heart had finally made a decision. A crafty smile flashed through her eyes. Even though she thought this way, she still wouldn't tell him just now. In fact, the present situation was so dangerous that her mind really should not be thinking about this kind of emotion and love stuff right now. First of all, the onslaught of the roasting heat from the flames. This was the greatest troublesome matter. She could not allow Nangong Liuyun to pour more spirit power into her, right? This way, she would be fine, but he would be worn out first. Gradually, Su Luo felt her eyelids becoming somewhat heavy and her consciousness becoming somewhat fuzzy. She slowly fell into a deep sleep. In midst of dozing, Su Luo's spirit floated into her space. At this point of time, the little divine dragon in her space had already restored his vigor earlier. He already didn't have that kind of dried up, shriveled, defeated appearance from before. Seeing Su Luo come over, the little divine dragon covered his little buttocks, with tears glistening in his eyes as he looked at Su Luo. Su Luo was looked at by his large pair of clear, monochrome, limpid eyes until her heart turned soft. She hurriedly asked what was the matter with him. The always clever and cute little divine dragon, this time, to her surprise, quite uncharacteristically rumbled loudly to Su Luo, making complaints about Nangong Liuyun's wicked conduct. He even suggested that Su Luo kick this abominable bad person. Su Luo suddenly didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After saying a few sentences to appease him, he finally again regained his clever and cute little appearance. Suddenly, the little divine dragon handed Su Luo something. His eyes were entirely filled with an excited light. A woo, treasure, a treasure. Su Luo immediately recognized it. This thing was the fiery red stone she had kicked before in the amethyst fish palace. Later, due to being influenced by her blood, it resulted in a strange change, turning it as transparent as suet jade. It was white and transparent as amber, so bright as to illuminate a person. What could this thing possibly be used for? Su Luo accepted this chunk of rock, doubtfully flipping it over and over in her hand. Luo Luo, Luo Luo, quickly wake up, wake up. Outside her space, Nangong Liuyun anxiously slapped Su Luo's cheeks. He didn't pay attention for barely a moment, and she unexpectedly fainted again. Nangong Liuyun's entire face was anxious. Spirit force flowed like a river into Su Luo's body, as if it cost nothing. Su Luo slowly opened both eyes. At last you are awake. Nangong Liuyun unhappily glared at her. He was so scared. His body was covered in cold sweat. I'm okay. Su Luo struggled to stand up. Suddenly, Su Luo stopped and stared blankly. She looked foolishly at that chunk of white stone in her hand. Momentarily, she could not react. How could it be like this? Chapter 484. Leaving the region of flames. 1. Su Luo lowered her head to look at the stone she gripped in her hand, which had already changed into a cold chunk of jade. Its size didn't change, still the size of a duck egg. The color was also a pure, crisp white. But Su Luo was astonished to discover that ever since she held onto this strange stone, afterwards, the threatening roasting heat in her body from the hot flames was actually absorbed by it, thread by thread. Thus the pressure on her was diminished and eventually stopped. This was unlikely to be real, right? Su Luo's heart was both happy, amazed, and stupefied by this nice surprise that suddenly occurred. If it was really like this, then doesn't it mean that as long as she held onto the stone, she wouldn't have to worry about the high temperature, which now was at a degree that was like peeling the skin off human flesh in the Cave of Flames? That they could continue to survive in this Cave of Flames? Nangong Luoyun saw Su Luo standing at the original place with a foolish blank expression, the corner of her mouth pointed up slightly, appearing to be pleasantly surprised, excited and also with an incredulous expression. He couldn't help but be a little surprised. What happened? Su Luo lifted her head to look towards him. Her clear, monochrome, limpid eyes were brimming with joy. It was too late to think more, and she handed over the stone in her hand. You have a look, see what this is. Nangong Luoyun took the offered stone. Before he could start using his spirit force, he discovered that the hot flames around his body unexpectedly flowed into the stone, like the bubbling of creek water. The temperature in the air was abruptly lowered to some extent. Nangong Luoyun's always unperturbed handsome face also had a startled appearance. Subsequently, a smiling expression that was gentle as jade and as tranquil and intoxicating as the cherry blossoms in March appeared. A very good stone indeed. It truly is a good stone. It was practically made for you based on your specifications. Quickly hold on to it well. By all means, don't lose it. Nangong Luoyun earnestly, prudently, and with a very serious expression, stared at Su Luo, stressing each word, warning her. Even though his words were solemn, however, his heart was exceptionally happy, happier than if he was the one who got a treasure. The heat wave in this Cave of Flames rushed to the sky with a scorching hot breath. He could hold on, but his Luo girl, even with his spirit power pouring into her, might not necessarily be able to withstand the heat. But now, everything was good. With this chunk of rock that could automatically absorb the heat, as long as the stone was not lost, his Luo girl would be safe and secure. Okay. Su Luo nodded her head seriously and tightly clenched onto that stone. This chunk of stone was still something I accidentally kicked in the Amethyst Fish Palace. Originally, I thought it was useless and picked it up in passing, but who would have imagined that now it would be so useful? Su Luo's eyes squinted slightly with a smile that showed she was extremely pleased with herself. Alas, girl, this luck of yours. Nangong Luoyun rubbed Su Luo's head momentarily. He was speechless and also didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If it came to luck, all the people in front of her would be completely defeated. Luck is also a part of strength. This proves my strength is also pretty good. Su Luo said with some self-satisfaction. Yes, it is indeed pretty good. This point Nangong Luoyun was actually in favor of. On this earth, could there be a few people that could run away for 3 days and 3 nights, while being pursued to be killed by a 7th-rank martial artist? Mentioning Li Outyin, Su Luo's heart became angry. Fortunately, he is already dead, otherwise humph. Nangong Luoyun tenderly caressed her white as jade cheeks. When all's said and done, it is still because your strength is not enough. That is actually a fact. Su Luo secretly breathed out a sigh. Her strength was indeed too lacking. Now the people that were active around her, even the worst was at 5th or 6th rank, while she was still pitifully at the peak of 3rd rank. How could you ask her to continue muddling along with them? Therefore, we shouldn't be in a hurry to go out. First, I should single-mindedly cultivate for a period of time in this Cave of Flames. Su Luo made a fist and solemnly said. Nangong Luoyun had a hesitant expression, slightly disapproving of this idea. You can cultivate at any time. You need not be so impatient at this time. Chapter 485. Leaving the region of flames too. But a natural cultivation place like this Cave of Flames is really difficult to find. Moreover, both you and I have the fire attribute. 1. Cultivating here will definitely save effort and lead to better results. Su Luo looked at him very seriously. You need not be worried about me. With this stone, the surrounding high temperature is already of no threat to me. Nangong Luoyun conceded that what Su Luo said were all very reasonable, but he still wasn't very much in favor of it. Wait until we find an exit, then we will leave at once. Good. Su Luo smiled while nodding her head. The cut-off dragonstone had already fallen. Wanting to leave was very difficult. Consequently, The two of them calmed down their hearts and started to cultivate in the cave of flames. Su Luo fished around in her space and finally took out a secret book of fire system cultivation method. She opened her eyes wider to look. It was actually the first book she had tossed in from before, Weaving Inferno. Weaving Inferno? Nangong Luyan had an odd expression on his face as he glanced at Su Luo, muttered and said, "Your luck is actually pretty good. The Jade Lake Palace has exactly this book of Weaving Inferno. They hide it away like a precious treasure, rarely letting others see it." Pfft! Su Luo suddenly laughed. "Looks like I and the Li family are bound by fate. Even the secret book of martial arts is the same version. Then, is there a person in the Li family that is cultivating this martial arts?" Nangong Liuyan's fine black hair flowed down in a torrent, carrying an uninhibited and elegant feel, making the side of his face even more demonically charming and tempting. One could only see him nodding his head. Li family's foremost person of the third generation, Li Xingtian, cultivated this. Previously, he was 7th rank. I don't know his current cultivation. Oh, Li Xingtian? Su Luo indicated that she had never even heard of this name. Nangong Liuyan's beautiful eyes were like remote black agate with a bright luster, as he slowly said, "Li Outyan's arrogance is very great, but compared to Li Xingtian, he could simply be described as modest." "So, you are saying this Li Xingtian is very unlikable, right?" "Naturally," Nangong Luyan uttered clearly and coldly in an even tone. A pair of beautiful long and narrow eyes looked towards Su Luo, with a devilishly flattering expression. He nodded his head as though it was a matter of course. Around 30 years old and trained to the 7th rank, his talent is still considered pretty good. Nangong Luyan reluctantly gave a somewhat positive evaluation. Su Luo stuck out her tongue. "Your standards are too harsh. People like Li Xingtian, on this continent, are already considered to be extraordinarily gifted. How could everyone be an evildoer like you, reaching 8th rank at this age?" Nangong Luyan lifted up Su Luo's chin, his lips hooked up into a jaunty smile the shape of a water caltrip, beaming with joy. "Girl, this king, in your heart is this amazing. Narcissistic guy. Give him a little sunshine, and he would automatically glitter brilliantly." Su Luo pinched his face, her smiling expression was splendid. "Yes, that's right, only you are the most amazing. Quickly go find a route out. Otherwise, such an amazing person shall forever be stranded in this cave of flames, unable to go out, and be a scourge of the common people." "For what reason would this king go be a scourge to those people? This king will only be a scourge to you." Saying this, Nangong Luyan took the opportunity to move closer to Su Luo and placed a kiss on her cheek. Su Luo disgruntledly kicked him. Quickly go. Stop delaying." With Su Luo's kick, Nangong Luyan could only stand up with a faintly complaining expression. He obediently went to look for a way out. After walking 2 steps, he still turned his head, reluctant to part her, looking at Su Luo with a complaining expression. Su Luo resembling a queen as she impatiently waving her hand. "Go quickly and return quickly." "Got it." Nangong Luyan responded discontentedly. Wait until he returned to his official residence. Then he must marry Su Luo and bring her home. At that time, however he wanted to embrace her, he would embrace her. However he wanted to kiss her, he would kiss her. When the time comes, he must kiss her according to 3 meals a day. Nangong Luyan remembered his complaints while flying away. Su Luo watched his leaving figure from the back. Then she calmed down and started to cultivate that book of Weaving Inferno. 1. Both having the fire attribute. This was clearly a mistake on the author's part, because we were told later that Nangong Luyan has wind attribute. So he has wind/water/lightning. Maybe she meant his lightning attribute is also good to cultivate in the cave of fire, since it is a stronger version of fire. Chapter 486. Leaving the Region of Flames 3. The Weaving Inferno was altogether divided into 5 levels. Su Luo now was cultivating the first level of the Flaming Spring State. The Flaming Spring State had nothing to do with spring water. It was instead related to the range of a spring. Within one move, the flames would be able to cover the entire mouth of a spring. Then would she have succeeded? But now, Su Luo was merely at the peak of the third rank. If she wanted to cultivate this weaving inferno, she really was barely qualified to do so. However, it was also fortunate that she was inside this cave of flames. These flames could provide Su Luo with an endless stream of fire property. This made her cultivation smooth and easy, with half the work and getting twice the results. The days of cultivating passed very quickly. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 days had passed. For these more than 10 days, every time Nangong Luyan finished cultivating, he would go to explore a way out. But every time, he would return disappointed. After these more than 10 days of cultivating, Su Luo's strength could only be described as progressing 1,000 miles in one day. Because she had the assistance of her space, Su Luo's cultivation was different than other people's. Her spirit was cultivating space system laws within her space. The Su Luo outside her space was cultivating the fire property laws, with both elements combined to cultivate together, complementing and helping each other, working mutually in harmony. It made Su Luo's strength rise very quickly. It was so fast. It was simply like flying in an airplane. It even made Nangong Luyan exclaim in admiration at her cultivation speed. This day, Su Luo had already faintly touched upon the thin boundary for promotion to the next rank. She believed that very quickly, she would be promoted to the 4th rank. In fact, so to speak, she had only stayed at the 3rd rank for a very brief period of time. It was only because recently, there were many things happening, so it felt as if she had stayed at the 3rd rank for a long time. For more than 10 days, her mind was highly focused, therefore, Su Luo intended to relax a little and rest properly. Afterwards, she would break through that final thin layer at the boundary, so as to make a breakthrough in one go. At this moment, in Su Luo's space, a fair and honest but amusing thing was happening in there. Once Su Luo saw it, she stopped her cultivating and watched full of interest. The little divine dragon. Ever since he was tossed into Su Luo's space, afterwards he became bored. But very soon, he found something he was interested in. Since Su Luo had arrived on this uninhabited island, afterwards, she had nearly forgotten about the amethyst crystal fish. However, Su Luo might have forgotten, but the little divine dragon had dug out that amethyst crystal fish she had tossed in a corner. He had placed it at the side of his little nest, where he slept and stared at it all day long. If you were to say that the little divine dragon was good to the little amethyst crystal fish, this would be a misunderstanding of his intentions. Every day, according to the schedule of 3 meals a day, the little divine dragon would always appear in front of the amethyst crystal fish and run around it in circles. The amethyst crystal fish would spit out crystal stones according to a schedule of 3 meals a day, just like a hen laying eggs daily. As for whether the crystal stone that was spit out was high grade or not, this was related to luck and the person's moral quality. Whenever the amethyst crystal fish spit out a piece of crystal stone that landed in the sea-colored bowl, the little divine dragon would waste no time in stretching out his paw to grab that crystal stone, and without the slightest hesitation, he would deliver it into his mouth. Chewing the crystal stones with crunch sounds, just like a little child chewing a piece of candy. Every time, the little divine dragon would report for duty punctually on the dot, to the extent that Su Luo didn't even discover that occasionally, for a few times, cyan-colored and even blue-colored crystal stones had appeared. However, without waiting for Su Luo to find them, these few pieces of crystal stones would be eaten by the little divine dragon as snacks. If Su Luo knew that blue-colored crystal stones were eaten by the little divine dragon like sugar pills, very likely, she would cover her chest from heartache. It was a pity she was completely immersed in cultivating the space laws in her space. Again, another day passed, and a burst of a faint spirit power fluctuation occurred in the air. The Su Luo outside her space slowly opened her eyes, the corner of her mouth tilted up slightly. It was obvious that her mood was very joyful. Nangong Luyan opened his tightly closed phoenix eyes, with a very indolent, eminent, unapproachable, wild and devilishly charming expression. Chapter 487. Leaving the region of flames 4. Nangong Luyan slanted his head, his sword-like eyebrows lifted slightly, as he smilingly looked at Su Luo. Successful? Yeah. Su Luo burst open into a shallow, faint, smiling expression. Unfolding into a lazy stretch, she then happily said, "Heaven will not disappoint a person who tries. I finally reached the 4th rank, really not easy ah." Nangong Luyan pinched the tip of her nose, between laughter and tears. "If you consider this not easy, then won't others be ashamed and unable to show their faces? Recall that you have just cultivated for a few days." Su Luo blinked her eyes, grumbling about it. "What few days? It will soon be 5 months. Soon to be 5 months? You call this a long time?" The corner of Nangong Luyan's mouth perked up into a devilishly flattering smile. Right now, he looked demonic yet with a sinister charm. "In less than 5 months, from lacking to having, from 1st rank to 4th rank, this speed of yours, what kind of speed is it? Since the beginning of recorded history on this continent, there was never such a speed being recorded." Immediately, Su Luo's pair of eyes shone, bright and clear with a lively expression. "Really? Then doesn't that mean I'm the first since the beginning of recorded history on this continent?" Yes. Nangong Liuyan's naturally beautiful, devilishly handsome face had a deep pair of eyes that were like pure crystal, sparkling and translucent. He said with certainty, "The list with regards to cultivation speed is indeed so." Su Luo was immediately very pleased. The corner of her mouth pointed up high, her sharp scissors like limpid, bright eyes smiled until they were curved. Before, she was still complaining about her cultivation speed being too slow, her strength being too weak. It was to the extent that she was always fleeing from being chased by people who wanted to kill her. She simply hadn't lived even a few peaceful days. But hearing Nangong Liuyun's explanation, her heart immediately became more peaceful. Speaking of which, her cultivation speed really was very fast. If it was known Su Shi, who was commonly referred to as a little genius, but at 14 years old was also merely a 4th rank, then what about for Su Luo? Before, she was still showing off in front of Su Luo, but now, Su Luo was totally capable of stepping on her, having her underneath her feet. Nangong Liuyun's features were picturesque, as he smilingly looked at her. "If you are still able to maintain this speed afterwards, then reaching 8th rank within 2 years is also not impossible. I'll hold you to your words." Su Luo smiled without holding back her complacent expression. Suddenly, Su Luo's complexion changed slightly, as she stared with amazement at the stone in her hand. Then, she looked at Nangong Luyan with astonishment, silently inquiring. Nangong Liuyan's gaze landed on that piece of stone. Suddenly, he was also somewhat speechless. What is going on?" Su Luo pointed to that mystical stone and asked in wonder. Just a moment ago, it was still slowly absorbing the heat in Su Luo's surroundings. But after Su Luo was promoted to the 4th rank, this stone's appetite seemed to have all at once increased by a lot. If you were to say that before, the stone was delicately swallowing and slowly chewing, but now, it was devouring everything ravenously. This stone seemed to have a mystical magic power, able to get the flames to automatically rush towards it, after which these flames would be swallowed by it at a speed that the naked eye could see, immediately disappearing, not to be seen again. "Have you felt that this cave of flames has changed somewhat?" Su Luo doubtfully asked. Why was it that she felt that the temperature in this cave of flames was slightly lower than when she first entered? Was the reason because of her promotion in strength? Unexpectedly, Nangong Liuyan's pair of icy, deep, black eyes indicated that he agreed. "Even you are able to detect it. It has clearly lowered to the point of being obvious." "Are you implying that my strength is very lacking?" Su Luo gave him a cold glare, but once again, she restrained her eyes to seriously say, "Is it really probable that this stone had absorbed it all?" Nangong Luyan smiled somewhat enigmatically. His pretty eyelashes were jet black, thick, and also slightly curled upwards. His lips were like red powder, contrasting against his skin, and making him even more bewitchingly beautiful. One could only see him laughingly pat Su Luo's head. "Girl with good luck, go steal some happiness." You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.